Husband, please don't use that thing. Inside the shabby thatched hut, a young girl was pleading tearfully. I abruptly opened my eyes and saw a young girl kneeling with her back facing me. She turned her tear-streaked face around, trembling. Her clothes were loosely draped, revealing her smooth, scarred back, crisscrossed with fresh and healing whip marks that seeped blood. Looking down, I saw the whip in my own hands, and my heart sank heavily. Wasn't I supposed to be on a mission abroad right now? The whip slipped from my fingers and fell to the ground. The girl flinched and immediately turned, clutching my leg desperately as she begged, "Husband, please, just punish me with the whip. But not with the stick. That'll be the death of me. I'll go to my family's home now and borrow rice to help repay your gambling debts. Just please, don't be mad." Sudden, unfamiliar memories surged into my mind, and it finally hit me. I had somehow transmigrated into an alternate world. I was in a border village of the Great Zhou dynasty called Lower River Village, now inhabiting the body of a man with the same name as me, a despicable gambling addict. It became clear that this was a dire time. The borderlands were under threat from barbarian invaders, while internal strife and corruption had left the common folk destitute. The famine had drained the village's life entirely. The Qingzhou government, desperate for soldiers, imposed harsh taxes and issued a brutal edict. Every household must send a male to fight, while young women under the age of 14 were forcibly married off to reduce family burdens. Couples that failed to produce children within a year would be taxed and penalized further. Lin Ruru, the girl before me, had once been the daughter of a wealthy family. But as punishment for marrying late, her family's wealth was seized and destroyed, and her father nearly conscripted as a soldier. Left with no other options, she married this wastrel of a man, her only way to delay her family's ruin. Yet, in just 3 short months, the original owner of this body had squandered her dowry, gambled away what little relief grains they had, and beaten her until she was covered in bruises. Brows furrowed tightly, I felt both hunger and urgency clawing at me. The barbarian forces could arrive at Qingzhou at any moment. Once the city falls, it will spell death for everyone. Suppressing the growing anger in my chest, I grabbed an outer coat and draped it over Lin Ruru's frail shoulders. "You don't need to borrow rice. Stay home and wait for me." Her face paled upon hearing these words. She had overheard something last night, a plan from the gambling den to sell her to the brothels to settle her husband's debts. And to her heartbreak, her husband had agreed. Tears streaming, she threw herself at my feet, gripping me tightly as she cried, "Husband, please no. I was wrong. Beat me, curse me, do whatever you like. But I beg of you, don't sell me to a place like that." Her terror was palpable, and I finally understood the depth of her fears. Guilt weighing on me, I lightly patted her shoulder and lowered my voice. "Don't worry. I'm going out to find food. That's all." I glanced at her frail figure and the bruises that marred her pale skin, then coughed awkwardly, turning my gaze aside. Despite her plain attire and makeup-free face, she carried an enticing grace. Her porcelain skin seemed luminous, and just one glance stirred something within me. I quickly cursed myself inwardly. What was I even thinking? She's my wife, married to me through official rights. What's more absurd was what I had learned from the memories of this body's original owner. Afraid that she might conceive and lead to his conscription, coupled with his obsession with gambling, the man hadn't even consummated their marriage in the 3 months they'd been wed. But my calm tone only seemed to unnerve Lin Ruru further. "Husband, what did you just say?" She was in utter disbelief. The man, who had only ever harshly berated and beaten her, was suddenly speaking kindly to her. Her panic only deepened. Was this a trick? Was he pretending to calm her down, only to sell her off for money later? Before she could gather her thoughts, the sound of her stomach growling tore through the tense silence. Her cheeks flushed bright red in embarrassment. I'll go gather wild vegetables in the woods to make soup," she stammered, hurriedly rising to her feet, only to wince in pain as her back wounds were aggravated. She gasped, inhaling sharply, her boundless pain hidden behind silent tears. My voice brooked no argument as I stopped her. "I told you stay home. I'll find food. You clean yourself up and change into some fresh clothes. Wait for me to return." I pressed her back into the chair firmly, leaving no room for discussion. Lin Ruru went limp, her strength sapped by old injuries and fresh trauma. This body's original owner had grinned when winning, but lashed out brutally whenever he lost. For her, fear had become muscle memory. Deciding it wasn't worth trying to explain further, I picked up the household's sole utility knife, grabbed 2 burlap sacks, and strode out the door. At the sound of the door shutting, Lin Ru sank to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. Clean myself up, and he took the sacks. Her trembling lips whispered the worst realization. He's going to put me in one and sell me. Her heart wrenched in despair, but she refused the thought of losing her dignity. Wiping her tears away, she retrieved a worn rope and glanced at the crooked beam overhead, closing her eyes as she steeled herself. Meanwhile, I followed the fragments of memory and arrived at the stream on the edge of the village. A few villagers crouched there, pants rolled up, splashing about to catch fish. Their methods, however, were clumsy and futile. I scoffed. During times of famine like this, the river had long been cleared of fish. Few dared to venture into the mountains to hunt. Without tools or survival skills, the risks of injury, or worse, death, were high. But I knew one thing clearly. To survive, fish alone wouldn't cut it. What's needed is meat. Rich, gamey, fatty meat to keep us warm and alive. Autumn meant wild animals were at their plumpest, making it the perfect time for hunting. And fortunately for me, wilderness survival was my bread and butter. In my former life, I had even taken the National Archery Championship title. With a proper hunting bow, taking down wild boars or foxes would be child's play. If I could get my hands on a crossbow or firearms, even tigers and leopards wouldn't stand a chance. Jackal or fox, even they'll have to bow before me. But time was against me, and lacking proper tools, my only option was to head up the mountain, set a few traps, and catch some wild fowl or rabbits to tide me over. As soon as I entered the mountain woods, I spotted a few colorful pheasants pecking at the ground. The moment I moved closer, they flapped their wings and flew off in a flurry of feathers. I wasn't worried. If even I couldn't catch them, the villagers wouldn't stand a chance. Once I crafted a slingshot or bow, these birds would end up as dinner on my table sooner or later. After setting up a few simple rabbit traps, I suddenly heard a grunt off in the distance. A half-grown young boar emerged from the brush, rooting around just 10 or so meters away. Thankfully, I was downwind, and the little boar didn't catch my scent right away. I quickly moved behind a nearby tree, clutching the sharpened stake I had prepared before heading up the mountain. The tip had even been hardened with fire. The young boar followed the scent of the berries I'd left in the traps, carelessly wrecking several of them in mere moments. As it munched away, it seemed to catch a faint whiff of something human. It perked up, head snapping to attention, its demeanor suddenly wary. There was only one thought in my mind, just a little closer. Unable to resist the lure in front of it, the little boar edged forward step by step. After ensuring there weren't any adult boars nearby, I sprang into action. With no time to aim properly, I hurled the wooden spear with all my might. Whoosh! The young boar turned to flee, but the spear was faster. Thud! It pierced its hind leg. Letting out a shrill squeal, the boar bolted, leaving a trail of blood behind. I pursued it, knocking it to the ground. Gripping my knife tightly, I pinned it down and cut its throat in one swift movement. The boar kicked wildly a few times in my grasp before finally going still. Not daring to linger, I hastily tore off some vines, tied up the boar, and hoisted it onto my back. I sped down the mountain as fast as I could. If an adult boar were to show up, I might still escape, but if tigers or wolves followed the scent of blood, I'd really be in trouble. Racing downhill, my mind was abuzz with calculations. I was looking at a hefty profit this time. The pork could be sold in the county's taverns, the hide was useful, and the most valuable part, the boar's tendons, could be made into bowstrings. By dusk, I had made it back to the village, following the riverbank. My arrival didn't go unnoticed. Several widows washing clothes by the water caught sight of me. These women loved their gossip. It wasn't uncommon to hear them guffawing about who in town was useless or which woman had been acting indecently. Isn't that Qin Shi, the good-for-nothing gambler from the west end of the village? What's that on his back? Looks like a young boar. Must be at least 50 pounds. Their eyes zeroed in on the plump boar I carried. They hadn't had a proper meal of meat in ages, and their cravings were obvious as they swallowed greedily. After whispering among themselves, they abandoned their washing tubs and charged toward me, blocking my path. Well, Qin Shi, where'd you get that fat boar? It's just you and your wife at home. You couldn't possibly finish it all. Keeping it would be a waste. Why not share some with us? Come on, we're all neighbors. Surely, you're not so stingy. Oh, Chinji, give me some meat, and I promise, I'll do whatever you want. The group of women swarmed forward, acting as if the boar's meat was theirs by right. Get lost. My face darkened, voice as cold and hard as stone. If you want meat so bad, tell your men to go up the mountain and hunt for it themselves. There's plenty of game in the woods. If you're too useless to handle it yourself, then stop sticking your hands where they don't belong. I owe you nothing. Startled by my icy rebuke, the women hesitated. They didn't dare approach me again, but weren't willing to let it slide either. They retreated, firing venomous curses at my back. That Chinchi, where does he get the nerve? Used to keep his mouth shut like a coward, but now he dares to raise his voice at us. Hey, isn't that flirty little Hitsuetsue's man, Huang-san, one of Chin-Chi's pals? That lucky brute. Chin-Chi stumbled into such a haul. You ought to tell Huang-san to pay him a visit and get a little something out of it for us too. Exactly. He'd never dare defy Huang-san. You've got to send him over. Come on, we haven't had a bite of real meat in years. Oh, please. Not like you're starving. Don't you have your nightly meat feast anyway? Ha ha ha. Their raucous laughter echoed louder. Hitsuetsue's face stiffened, teeth clenched with fury. Fine. Let him play the hero all he wants. I'll show him exactly what my man can do. She stormed off in a huff to find Huang-san. Meanwhile, I marched home with the boar on my back, eager to butcher it before nightfall. But the scene awaiting me inside my home froze me in my tracks. Lin Ruru had knocked over a stool. She lay crumpled on the floor, unconscious. Above her, the crooked roof beam had split, and a frayed rope dangled loosely from it. She had tried to end her life. My expression darkened. Dropping the boar and my sack to the side, I scooped up a bucket of cold water and splashed it straight onto her face. She jolted awake, hacking and coughing. When her eyes opened, they were met with my frigid glare. My husband, I cut her off, voice sharp and unyielding. Who gave you permission to die? You belong to me. Your life does as well. Sorry, but I can't assist with that. Late at night. Don't go to the casino, she said. Stay here and consummate our marriage. I froze for a moment before it clicked. The original owner of this body was a hopeless gambler, losing everything, including the government's grain and her dowry. Today, after bringing back a wild boar, she must have thought I was about to gamble it away again. If we didn't consummate the marriage soon and she didn't conceive a child, it would harm her family in the long run. No wonder she was feeling so anxious. I slammed the table with determination. Fine. Tonight, we'll consummate. Linru didn't expect me to agree so readily. She stared at me, stunned, unsure of what to do next. Seeing her flustered expression, I tapped the edge of my bowl with my chopsticks. Get your bowl. Sit down and eat. She brought over the bowls and chopsticks. Without a second thought, I served her soup and meat. Linru was taken aback and quickly refused. No need, husband. I can't eat that much. Eat. If you don't finish, you'll get a beating. Startled, she immediately lowered her head and began eating slowly, occasionally stealing glances at my expression as if she was ready to put her chopsticks down at any moment. I, however, remained calm. After finishing my meal in a few bites, I set down my bowl and left the courtyard. She needed to eat properly tonight. Otherwise, she wouldn't have the energy for what's coming. I rested briefly under a tree before finding a patch of flat ground to practice my punches as a warm-up. It was an old habit from my years in the military. The body I now inhabited was in decent shape. With proper training and nutrition, it could return to near prime condition in 3 months. Just as I finished a round of practice, urgent footsteps and mocking laughter echoed from the hill below. Well, look at this. Got some energy after a full stomach, huh? Even practicing punches. If you've got so much strength, why not use it on your wife? Or don't tell me you just can't perform. If you're aiming for a kid, we bros can help you out. A man named Huang-san sauntered up, arms crossed, his eyes filled with greed and malicious desire. He'd had his eyes on Lin Ruru for a long time, obsessed with her figure and fair complexion. I turned my head, my gaze cold as steel. What did you just say? Say it again if you have the guts. Huang-san was the village bully. He was the one who lured the original owner to the casino and schemed with the owner to cheat him out of his money. I hadn't sought him out for payback yet, and here he was, delivering himself to my doorstep. Huang-san sneered darkly. Drop the act. I know you killed a wild boar today. If you know what's good for you, hand it over. My brothers haven't had meat in months. I interrupted him coldly. What I'm asking about is what you said earlier. He froze, finally noticing the murderous intent in my eyes. Anger flared up in his chest. Who do you think you are, huh? Got a bit of luck today, and now you don't know your place? Talking back to me. Hand it over, or I'll take care of you first. Then let my brothers take care of your woman. The two thugs behind him rolled up their sleeves, ready to strike. All right, I said with a cold smile as my eyes turned icy. With a quick step forward, I punched Huang Sen straight in the throat. He staggered back, clutching his neck, but before he could recover, I drove my knee into his stomach. In that moment of vulnerability, I grabbed his head with both hands and twisted sharply. A sickening crack echoed as Huang San collapsed to the ground like a dead dog. The two thugs, now pale and trembling, turned to flee. I chased after them, landing a strike on each with precision. Crack, crack. Two more lifeless bodies hit the ground, their necks twisted unnaturally. Behind the slightly ajar door of the house, Lin Ruru had witnessed everything. The bowl in her hand slipped and shattered on the floor. Her whole body trembled, rooted to the spot as if her feet were nailed down. I walked over, bent down to pick up the shards, and spoke in an eerily calm tone. So you saw all of that. Her voice quivered as she stammered, biting her lip. Husband, I heard everything. They wanted to hurt me. You only did it to protect me. I'm not afraid. I was momentarily surprised, then pulled her into an embrace. Be good. I'll protect you for the rest of my life. Lin Ruru leaned against my chest, her voice shaky. Really? I gazed down at her, my eyes cold but unyielding. Then, suddenly, I smiled. Didn't you say we should consummate the marriage? Go wash up. Wait for me in bed. I'll deal with these rats first, then I'll come back to take care of you properly. I gave her a light pinch on the backside, making her face flush red as she scurried off. I stepped out, dragging the three corpses up the mountain and tossing them aside. Looking down the empty trail, I muttered under my breath. I took a boar from you today. Here are 3 lives in return. Consider us even. I ran all the way back home, pushing the door open. Inside the dark room, the small figure on the bed trembled slightly. Husband, it's me. I made my way to her, pulling her close, my breath growing heavier. This was the first time Lin Ruru had been held so tightly by me. Like a startled chick, she shrank in my arms. The more she tried to dodge, the tighter. It's because I had forced her into a corner with no way out. The next morning, when I woke up, I found her still nestled in my arm. My heart softened involuntarily. I had lost control last night, leaving her completely exhausted. I decided to let her sleep in a little longer. However, Lin Ruru stirred awake eventually. Realizing how closely snuggled we were, a mix of sweetness and unease filled her heart. She whispered softly by my ear, saying that as long as I wouldn't abandon her, she was willing to do anything. Then, she buried her face in my chest, igniting something within me instantly. Her voice was as faint as a mosquito's buzz, yet despite her soreness and trembling, she forced herself up to boil water for me. Every inch of her body ached, but she still managed to prepare everything I needed for the day. Squatting in front of the stove, listening to the crackling sounds of firewood, she thought back to the humiliation and slaps from the night before. Her cheeks flushed, so red it seemed the color could drip down. Once everything was set, I sharpened my dagger for protection, told her to lock the door securely, and then hoisted the remaining wild boar meat onto my back before heading out. It was late autumn, and the weather was getting colder and colder. This broken-down thatched hut wouldn't last us through the winter. I had to head into the county to trade for money and buy essential supplies. 10 or so miles northeast of Zaihokin was Ankang County, which also happened to be where her family resided, but I didn't have the time for that visit. Upon arriving in town, I headed straight to the tavern to sell the meat. The kitchen there valued wild game highly, and the price was better than at the butcher shop. Over 37 pounds of tender meat fetched me 2,601. I gave away the scraps, but I refused to sell the large bones. In chaotic times like these, fats could mean survival, and bone marrow was priceless. Selling it cheaply was practically a death sentence. I exchanged the money for 2.5 taels of fragmented silver and a handful of copper coins, then went straight to the blacksmith's. The tools here were rough, but durable. I picked out a hand axe, ordered 20 iron arrowheads, and even stocked up on household items like a kitchen knife and scissors, spending over 301. Before leaving, I also placed a deposit for the smith to craft me a spearhead from good steel, ready for pickup next time. Next, I stopped at the fabric store to purchase 2 bolts of patterned cloth along with 10 pounds of cotton. I also grabbed things like lamp oil, bowls, chopsticks, and alcohol from the marketplace. All in all, I spent another half-tael of silver. With so much stuff that my hands were full, I decided to hire an ox cart, costing me another 10 won, and even got someone to run errands for me at the rice store. Because of the war, prices had skyrocketed. Mixed rice went for over 20 won per dough, while white rice was outrageously priced at 85 won per dough. Gritting my teeth, I bought 10 dough of mixed rice, 2 dough of white rice, and even added some wheat flour. Lastly, I stopped by the pharmacy to pick up medicine for treating bruises and injuries, intending to bring it back for Lin Ru to use on her wounds. She was still hurt, and last night, I held back from touching her, but the frustration remained bottled up inside me. Could something like this be held back forever? Definitely not. As I left the pharmacy, a sneaky-looking servant slipped out from the corner of an alley. He had been trailing me, now eyeing my bulging money pouch. He wiped his nose and darted toward the gambling house. I had already recognized him as a gambling house lackey. The previous deadbeat owner owed the house dozens of taels of silver and had even pawned off the property deed. This guy likely noticed I had money and rushed back to report it. But I didn't care. If they dared to show up at my door, I'd fight until they admitted defeat. Besides, it was that gambling addict who owed them, not me, Qin-Chi. The wife, I'll take responsibility for. The debts? Not a chance. The ox cart driver brought me back to Xiaohukan, and the moment I entered the village, all eyes were on me. The cart was stacked high with goods, and the villagers, their eyes green with envy, watched from a distance. Yet they didn't dare approach, wary of my grim expression. They simply followed from afar, stopping just outside my house. A few village women, who loved gossiping the most, were the first to rush up to my courtyard, yelling loudly, "Xiaoro, you've got such good fortune. Your man's brought back so many supplies. You won't have to worry this winter. Our family hasn't had rice in 3 days now. Xiaoro, have pity on us, will you? Come out and look. Your man is something great now." Lin Ruru, dressed in my old hemp clothing because her outfit from the night before was torn, was just cleaning some wild vegetables when the women forcibly dragged her out. The sight of the cart full of supplies and the constant badgering about sharing rice and fabrics made her feel lightheaded. Suddenly, there was a loud thud as a throwing axe embedded itself deep into the wooden pillar of the courtyard gate, shaking the entire doorframe. I jumped off the ox cart, pulled out the axe, and strapped it back onto my waist. If you want rice, don't come empty-handed. Before winter comes, I need to rebuild this house. Tell your men to go to the mountain and cut some trees for me. 1 tree equals 1 gene of rice. Cut as many as you'd like. I'll take them all. And another thing, don't lay a hand on my wife, Lin Ruru. I find you lot filthy. This household, she doesn't call the shots. From now on, come directly to me with anything. The women's expressions shifted drastically, and they immediately scattered like terrified birds. Lin Ruru quickly hid behind me, clutching my arm nervously. After paying for the cart ride, Lin Ruru was about to step forward and start unloading the supplies when I pulled her back. I shoved the 2 bolts of patterned fabric into her arms. Pick the color you like best and make yourself 2 new outfits. Stuff them with lots of cotton so you don't freeze. The rest will be for making a new cotton quilt. Look, one is indigo with white floral patterns, and the other is a festive bright red. Both are made of the finest quality cotton, soft and thick. Her heart raced with panic. How much food could these fabrics be traded for? How could she deserve to wear clothes this refined? My husband, I don't need new clothes. I'm not afraid of the cold, she said. You work so hard outside. These fabrics should be made into clothes for you. I'm fine without them. After everything that had happened yesterday, her heart hadn't yet settled. She felt that the more ragged her clothing, the safer she would feel. I touched her cold hands and feet, frowning slightly. Do you remember the 3 obediences for women? Unmarried, obey your father. Married, obey your husband. Widow, obey your son. She murmured. Since you're married, obey your husband and follow my words, I said firmly. Lin Ruaro blushed, a shy smile tugging at her lips. Yet inside, it felt as though her heart was quietly warmed by something. This is medicine for your injuries. After dinner, go back to the room, take off your clothes, and let me rub it on for you. Gently, I nudged her toward the courtyard. Lin Ruaro took small steps back into the yard, but turned around after a few steps. Her eyes reflected both surprise and fear as she anxiously tried to gauge if I had truly changed. Seeing me focused only on carrying the bags of rice and flour into the house, without giving her any orders, she felt even more unsettled. Determined, she decided to show her loyalty without delay. She carefully placed the fabrics back in the room and immediately went out to start a fire for cooking. Today, Sister Tsuetsue took me to the mountains to gather some wild greens and mushrooms. I'll use white rice to make porridge for you, my husband. You've been so good to me. I don't have other talents, but I can serve you wholeheartedly for the rest of my life without ever wavering. Heaven and earth bear witness to my loyalty. Her voice was firm as she held a small basket, her determined gaze unwavering. In times like these, for a woman, marrying the wrong person meant constant beatings and humiliation. Some were eventually even sold into brothels. To be able to eat rice and meat now, to have warm clothing for the winter, this was an unimaginable blessing for her. Losing this fragile stability was a dread that gripped her deeply. Sister Tsuetsue? Which Tsuetsue? My chest tightened, and my face instantly fell, clouding with a cold expression. I snatched the basket, uncovering the wild greens only to find several bright red mushrooms resting at the bottom. Do you know these mushrooms are highly poisonous? Lin Ruoiro's legs gave out, and she dropped to her knees, clutching the hem of my clothes, her voice trembling with sobs. I truly didn't know. You've been so good to me lately. I'm grateful beyond words. How could I ever try to harm you? Punish me. It's all my fault. I ignored her pleas and simply picked out the poisonous mushrooms, placing them into a bowl. Go. Cook these. Trembling, Lin Ruaro took the bowl, appearing as though her soul had left her body. She dragged herself to the stove, and her eyes slowly dimmed, dark with despair. She thought I was going to force her to her end. As the water boiled, she dropped the mushrooms into the pot and suddenly turned around. My husband, please allow me to serve you one last time, she said with tearful eyes. Her hands undid her clothing, the fabric slipping down her shoulders, revealing skin so pale it seemed to glow. But I immediately scooped her up, carrying her into the room. With just a few moves, I had taken off her top and warmed my palms with medicinal liquor. Gently, I massaged it onto her back, slowly and carefully. Who said this broth was for you to drink? I said. Lin Ruaro was taken aback, but tears started streaming down her cheeks even faster. The man from the other night who picked a fight, his name was Huang San. He was in a relationship with that Tsuetsue, I explained softly. You're a newlywed and don't leave the house much, so you naturally wouldn't know about their affair. She took advantage of your innocence to try to poison me. As the warm medicinal balm seeped into her skin, my movements stayed steady and restrained. Lin Ruaro could no longer hold herself together, her sobs shaking her entire body. She had misunderstood me. My intent wasn't to harm her, but to strip the poisonous blade out of her unaware hands before it could strike me. Suddenly, she turned back around, throwing herself into my arms. Blushing fiercely, she kissed me deeply, as though terrified this soft, protective side of me might vanish in the blink of an eye. In that moment, Lin Ruaro had one singular thought in her heart: give him her everything. The warm afternoon sunlight made one feel comfortably drowsy. After finishing lunch, we poured that deadly mushroom soup into a clay pot. Tidying away our plates and bowls, we set out. Originally, I hadn't planned on taking her with me, but Lin Ruaro, with an unshakable resolve, insisted firmly on going herself. She declared that as her husband had been the one targeted, it was her duty to seek justice. That bowl of soup, she said, had to be fed to Tse by her own hand. Touched by her strength, I made no move to stop her. The path I've chosen is one paved with blood and consequence. Any woman standing by my side needs to be equally relentless. Kindness in such a life can, and will, mean the loss of one's life. Tsuetsue's home, on the east edge of the village, wasn't far. Just a few steps, and we stood before her gate. When she saw us push through the door into her yard, the color instantly drained from her face. Fear filled her wide eyes, her hands trembling mid-motion as she packed her belongings. That night, when Huang San came to confront me, she had been trailing from a distance. She had seen with her own eyes as I sent him to his grave, like the grim reaper himself, and tossed his lifeless body into the wilderness. After that, she hadn't dared to sleep a wink. She had considered reporting me to the authorities, but without any proof of his death, it would be useless. So, she concocted a malicious plan, the idea of poisoning her. And yet, here I was, standing right in front of her, alive and breathing. My face was cold and emotionless as I stepped closer to her, one step at a time. Hitsuru panicked and tried to run, overturning tables, chairs, and bowls in the process. But in less than a second, I grabbed her harshly and yanked her back, throwing her to the ground with force. I slapped her across the face twice, hard enough to make her nose and mouth bleed. As she opened her mouth to beg for mercy, I reached out and twisted her jaw. The dislocation left her unable to make more than pitiful whimpering sounds. Linruru was standing nearby, clutching the clay pot, her entire body trembling. Her legs seemed weighed down like they were made of lead. "Give it to me," I said, reaching my hand out toward her. "No, I'll do it," she firmly replied, her knuckles turning white from gripping the pot so tightly. Through tears and choked sobs, she declared that she didn't want to be a burden on me forever. She wanted to be someone who could stand by my side. With those words, she made up her mind. She poured the entire contents of the clay pot into Hitsurue's mouth and nose without hesitation. I let go and stepped back just in time. Linruru closed her eyes and shouted, "Die already." The pot came down hard, smashing onto Hitsurue's face. She had no chance to dodge it. Her nose caved in upon impact, and blood gushed out instantly. As if her strength had been drained completely, Linruru collapsed into my arms, nearly fainting. Hitsurue, now poisoned and suffering severe trauma, struggled for less than half a minute before her life came to a violent end. Back at the house, I settled Linruru down to rest while I got started working on processing some wild boar sinew. I soaked and softened it, twisting and drawing it into bowstrings. My goal was to make a short bow. This batch of sinew wasn't enough for anything more, but next time I hunted larger game, I could craft a more powerful crossbow. Hunting has turned into the fastest way for me to make a living these days, and I can't afford to slack off. An hour passed, and just as my bowstring was nearly ready, I heard footsteps outside the house. I thought for a moment that Linruru must have gotten up, but as I pressed my ear to the door's edge, I realized the steps came from the yard. I grabbed my axe and cautiously peered through the door crack. What I saw left me momentarily frozen. 3 bare-chested men were coming up the hill, each with a log as thick as a grown man's waist slung over their shoulders. They were all panting hard as they trudged toward my house. They actually came to trade wood for rice. I rushed to open the door, still finding it hard to believe what I was seeing. "You're here to trade for rice?" I asked. The one leading the group, Gung Air, dropped the log onto the ground with a loud thud and scratched his head sheepishly. "My wife told me to give it a shot." "Brother Chin, are you really trading food for wood? We heard you were planning to build a house, so we picked out some good pine for you. Trimmed off the branches and everything," he explained. The 2 men behind him, named Haigu and Dashin, stood silently grinning. "Wait here," I said, taking the sack of rice they'd brought. I filled it with 2 pounds of coarse rice for each man and added a piece of wild boar meat the size of an egg. As I handed it back, I added, "If you can find me an arm-thick piece of mulberry wood in the mountains and bring it to me, I'll trade you rice and meat for it just the same." When Gung Air realized I'd given them much more than he'd expected, including meat, his face flushed bright red, and he stammered, "Brother Chin, this isn't the price we agreed on. We can't take this much." I waved him off. "This is the new price from now on. I'll take however much you can bring me. And if you're willing to stick with me, I'll make sure none of you ever go hungry again." The 3 of them exchanged glances, still hesitant to accept it all. I ended up shoving them out of the door while pretending to be gruff, finally getting them to leave with the food in hand. Initially, I had purposely kept the trade at just 1 pound of rice per tree to discourage opportunists. I never thought someone would actually haul a massive tree trunk all the way here. A bushel of rice weighs around 6 pounds. I just traded a bushel for 3 high-quality pine logs. Considering how much pine like this would go for in the market, I essentially scored a bargain. If these logs were taken to the county town, they could probably fetch several dozen coins. But in these chaotic times, who would risk hauling trees for miles and miles instead of securing food for their family? So for people like them, chopping and trading wood for food has become the most viable, even profitable, exchange. I stared at the 3 logs for a long moment before slapping my forehead as realization struck. The best way to make money isn't to struggle alone. I'd initially pegged these three as honest folk and figured I could use food and meat to win them over. But now, thinking about it further, isn't it far more efficient to have an entire group of people working together rather than just relying on my own labor? I don't just want them to work for me. I need to lead the entire village to work with me, to survive together. The thought had barely formed when my mind began to race with plans. I carried the pine logs into the yard and surveyed my ramshackle, thatched roof shelter. The main beam had broken when Lin Ruru tried to hang herself, and it really couldn't last much longer. Might as well tear it all down. Winter was approaching fast, and relying on an old, patched-up coat wasn't enough to survive. I decided I'd build a brick house instead. A place with fire-heated walls, a kitchen that opens into the living space, and a proper hall on the other side. A simple but functional design around 40 square meters. Estimating roughly, I need nearly 10,000 bricks. There wasn't a single person at the market selling bricks, so I'd have to make them myself. We had less than a month before winter set in. Making 10,000 bricks on my own, by the time I'd finished, winter would already be over. The only solution was to rally the entire village to work together. But all of it boiled down to one word: money. The more I calculated, the more my head spun. Where on earth was I going to get the money for all this? I let out a wry laugh and carried the wine jars I'd brought back from the county to start distilling. About half an hour later, I heard someone approaching in the distance. The breathing was heavy and loud, almost like an ox snorting. It was Gung Air. "Brother Cheen, see if this piece of mulberry would suit your needs," Gung Air said as he strode in, carrying a thick, straight, 3-meter-long branch over his shoulder. It was exactly what I needed. I handed him a ration of rice and meat in return, then carried the wood to the courtyard. With a few precise strikes of my axe, I chopped off the thinner end, smoothed out both sides, and quickly carved out the basic shape of a bow. Mulberry wood has excellent elasticity and toughness, making it the perfect material for a bow. I left the bow frame to dry partially, then boiled some wheat flour into glue, mixed in fine hemp string, and wrapped it tightly around the bow to strengthen it even further. I worked tirelessly until dusk. When Lin Ruru stepped outside and saw the mulberry wood alongside 5 pine logs in the courtyard, her hand flew to her mouth in surprise. She had thought I was joking about building a house. It was labor-intensive and costly, and impossible to finish before winter hit. No one would dare take such a daunting task upon themselves. But seeing the wood unloaded at home made her realize I was serious. She didn't ask any more questions and simply turned to prepare dinner. A few days ago, she never would have believed we'd have so much rice, flour, and meat in the house, let alone that I had stopped laying a hand on her altogether. After witnessing so many inexplicable changes, another house didn't seem so far-fetched anymore. As she turned her head, she caught sight of me stringing my bow in the courtyard, adjusting it repeatedly. My steady, focused expression made her feel like I'd become an entirely different person. After dinner, I whittled 20 arrows. Under the dim lamplight, Lin Ruru sat in the courtyard sewing quilts. Her hands became more and more meticulous, but when she noticed my gaze fixed on her, her cheeks began to flush a deep red. Startled, she let out a sudden cry as I swept her into my arms and carried her inside. The door slammed shut, and only the sounds of her flustered pleas remained in the air. Before dawn, I was already up, heading into the mountains with my bow and arrows in tow. Grumbling under my breath the entire way, my irritation from the previous night hadn't worn off. I hadn't been satisfied, and the frustration smoldered in my chest. Thinking about Lin Ruru's delicate health, I decided I'd gather some ginseng, deer antler, or similar remedies to help nourish her body. Otherwise, I feared she wouldn't be able to withstand my demands for long. Passing by the spot where the bodies had been left before, a chill ran down my spine. Huang San and his group's remains were gone. All that was left were some droppings and drag marks. It was a tiger. I immediately sobered up. Even a trained soldier wouldn't face a tiger empty-handed. It's not a matter of being unable to win, but the cost of injury. In a place like this, medical treatment was essentially non-existent. A severe injury was as good as a death sentence. After studying the claw marks and scent trail, I determined the tiger had been gone for at least half a day. Only then did I cautiously press onward, bow in hand, deeper into the forest. About half an hour later, the forest grew denser. The horizon was just starting to light up, prime time for large animals to hunt for food. Climbing to a ridge, I peered down to see a flicker of movement hundreds of meters away. It was a deer. My heart began to race as I crouched low, silently following the ridge, keeping my eye on it. Deer are herd animals. If there's one, there might be 3 to 5 more nearby. A mature stag, in particular, would be a fortune. Edging closer, I spotted a group of spotted sika deer grazing peacefully below, like sacks of silver swaying as they nibbled at the grass. Through the gaps in the foliage, my eyes fixed on a sturdy stag, about 3 or 4 years old, with 3-pronged antlers atop its head. It was strong and highly alert. Drawing my bow slowly, I didn't so much as blink before releasing. The arrow whistled through the air, embedding itself deep in the stag's side. The herd scattered in panic while the stag let out a piercing cry, stumbling as it tried to escape into the deep forest. Its breathing grew labored, blood flooding its lungs. It wouldn't last long. I launched myself from cover, running faster than the wounded animal, shouting to frighten it further. Panic would cause it to lose even more blood, giving me the chance for a second shot. As I pursued it, I leapt onto the trunk of a fallen tree, drawing my bow to full tension once more. The second arrow flew like a streak of black lightning, striking the stag's throat and pinning it to a tree. It staggered, spraying blood, its legs crumpling beneath it as it collapsed to the ground and twitched once before going still. Approaching the scene, I looked at the pool of blood and scowled. Hauling the stag back would surely result in losing a good portion of the meat. It was my own fault for being out of practice. I'd need to be more precise the next time I hunted. I grabbed my small axe and quickly assembled a makeshift sled out of vines and branches, heaving the stag onto it before making my way back to the village. By the time I returned, the morning fog was just beginning to lift. The village chief, Chow Kong, was getting ready to head out and work. I ran into someone as I was dragging back a huge deer, over 200 pounds, and they were absolutely stunned, their eyes practically glued to it. Just yesterday, he was scolding his wife for talking nonsense, saying that if I could hunt a wild boar, he'd write his name backward. This morning, though, he clearly had to eat his words in the hard way. Mrs. Chow swayed her hips and giggled, saying, "Husband, look at those antlers. My mom always said soaking them in liquor can, be good for you in that way." Chow Kang's face darkened further. He was only in his early 30s, but lately, he had been feeling more and more inadequate, especially around his wife. Putting on a forced friendly face, he stepped up awkwardly. "Chin Dagon, antlers are just bones. They're worthless. You don't need to bother hauling them to the county. Out of kindness, I'll just take them off your hands for 2 coins of silver. We're all from the same village. You can trust me. I always look out for my fellow villagers." I wiped the sweat off my brow, pulling off my shirt and tossing it over my shoulder while listening to his words. Instead of taking him up on his kindness, I let out a laugh. "Chow Village Chief," I said, "life seems to be treating you well. Eating lamb regularly, huh?" Chow Kong froze. "No, I haven't eaten lamb." My expression darkened. "Then why are you acting sick here? Get lost." Throwing my shirt back over my shoulder, I grabbed the cart and continued on my way without a hint of hesitation, leaving him standing there awkwardly, the color draining from his face. What Chow Kong didn't notice was his wife watching me leave, her gaze glued to my strong back, eyes filled with a certain fire. Chow isn't much of a man anymore, she thought, and he still wants another child? If worse comes to worst, I'll just go borrow from Chin Dagon. She steeled herself. This was a conversation she'd need to have with her husband sooner rather than later. By the time I got home, I hauled in another deer. Lin Ruru only froze for a second before rushing up, fumbling as she tried to help. I tossed the deer into the courtyard, turned on my heel, and made my way to Longzhong, the herbalist from the nearby Day village, to purchase some realgar. On the way back, I spotted Chow Kong on the edge of a field, furiously beating his wife. He wasn't holding back. I only shook my head silently as I passed by. A woman from Spring Blossom House. What could you expect? She likely gave him a good reason to lose his temper. When I got home, I added the realgar to some liquor I'd brought back from the county, stirred in some deer blood, and took a sip. The piercing spice rushed straight to my brain. The original liquor was so diluted it was like drinking water. I'd been mulling over refining it into a stronger spirit to sell for more profit. With the deer blood and realgar mixed in, its value instantly skyrocketed. I butchered the deer, skinning it, trimming the meat, pulling out the bones, and removing the tendons. The skin, tendons, and organs I set aside for personal use. I cut off about 30 pounds of venison to keep, deciding the rest would be sold in town. On my way back, I even found a rabbit caught in one of my traps, took it along, and handed it off to Lin Ruru to roast. That afternoon's lunch was simple, rabbit and porridge. Meanwhile, the courtyard was stacked with venison, antlers, bones, and a few vats of deer blood realgar liquor. But I was stuck with a problem. These goods weighed at least 300 pounds total. There was absolutely no way I could get them into the county on my own. I'd need to borrow a cart. And in this village, the only one with a cart was our stingy village chief, Chow Kong. And to make matters worse, I'd just insulted him that morning. Knowing him, he'd wrangle me out of every coin he could, just for the sake of using his cart. Chow Kong was infamous for being frugal. He watched over all his workers like a hawk, afraid that someone might slack off for even a moment. The most he had ever spent in his entire life was when he bought Mrs. Chow's freedom from Spring Blossom House for 20 taels of silver. On their wedding night, his face was green with regret. But I also knew his one weakness. If there was money in it for him, he'd agree. With a pouch of over 100 copper coins, I headed to his house. The Chow residence, nestled at the edge of the village, stood out with its brick walls and white tiles, the most ornate structure in our small settlement. When I reached the gate, I saw someone crouched near a side wall, peering through a hole, giggling and moving their hand oddly in their pocket. It was Chow Tai, Chow Kang's younger brother. I wrinkled my brow. One Chow was strange enough. Why was the whole family like this? Ignoring him, I headed to the front door and knocked. The family's steward answered, but his expression tightened the moment he saw me. When he heard I wanted to borrow the cart, he rattled off a laundry list of fees, fodder fees, wear and tear fees, sweat fees, hoof fees, the kind of rambling nonsense that would make your head spin. I cut him off, dropping 20 copper coins into his hand. He paused, blinking at the shiny coins, then sighed like he was stuck in a bind. I'd like to help you, but Master's not here right now. I can't make that decision. Before I could respond, a woman's voice called out faintly from inside. If he can't make the decision, someone else can. Mrs. Chow emerged, her hair still damp, wearing a fresh set of clothes. She pulled at her sleeves casually, attempting to cover up some bruises on her arms. I stood up straight and greeted her politely, feeling a ray of hope. Chow Kong doted on his wife, so if it didn't cost him anything, she'd likely have the final say. She smiled slightly, her eyes lingering on my chest for a moment too long, bright like a spark had lit within them. Then, with a wave of her hand, she gestured for me to follow. Mrs. Chow led me inside, shutting the door behind us. With her back against it, she hooked a finger at the collar of her blouse and slowly started tugging it down. Dagon, we're from the same village, so I'll cut to the chase. I don't need your money for this cart, she said, her voice teasing. But I have a condition. If you agree, we can consider it settled. Her smile turned suggestive, making my heart sink. What conditions? I just want to borrow your seed. As she leaned in closer, the overpowering perfume hit me so hard it made me feel nauseous. This woman used to be the top courtesan at Chunhua House. Nobody knows what tricks she pulled to sweet-talk Chow Kong into buying out her contract back then. But years have passed, and not even thick layers of makeup could hide the wrinkles at the corners of her eyes. Her figure was nothing to write home about anymore, yet she still carried herself like royalty, expecting others to cater to her whims. Just help me out, will you? She cooed coquettishly, her voice syrupy sweet as she tried to act charming. My nausea only grew worse. I sidestepped to avoid her and noticed a small, inconspicuous hole in the corner of the wall. A plan instantly came to mind. Madam, no rush. I have my ways of doing things. I lowered my voice deliberately. First, take a bath, then cover your eyes with a red cloth and pull the blanket over your head. Her face flushed, and she lightly slapped my chest with mock annoyance. Oh, you scoundrel. You actually know how to have fun. She turned and went into the inner room, setting down the bed curtain. I'll be waiting. I turned and walked straight out the door, bumping into Chow Tai, who looked rather satisfied with himself. After exchanging a few hushed words, his face lit up, and he gave me a thumbs up. Big Jen, from this day forth, you're like a brother to me. I quickly covered his mouth and dragged him inside. Madam, don't look up. It's me, Big Jen, I called out. From behind the curtain came her coy voice. Why'd you take so long? Hurry up and get in. Chow Tai flashed me a knowing smile, impatiently rushing into the room. I smirked coldly, turned away, hopped onto the cart, and left. Whatever happened afterward was none of my concern. Even if Madame Chow found out, she'd have to swallow the humiliation. After all, it's still a Chow family heir. Who could she complain to? Back home, I quickly tidied up and urged Lin Ru to work on the clothes. Then I went back into the county town. This time, I knew my way around. I sold the venison to the restaurant, while the deer bones and antlers went to the apothecary, netting me over 30 taels of silver. The remaining jars of deer blood wine weren't accepted at the shop, but a few wealthy merchants snapped them up for 5 taels a jar. Holding over 50 taels of silver, my chest felt heavy. A single deer was worth this much. This money was enough to buy a small courtyard house in the county town. I tightened my grip on the money bag, headed to the grain store, and carried out 50 bushels of mixed grain. I also went to the blacksmith shop to pick up a spearhead and bought saws, chisels, nails, and other tools, throwing them all onto the ox cart. As I prepared to head to the town square, a commotion erupted at the city gate. A group of war veterans, injured and maimed, entered the city dusty and downcast. According to Dezhou law, families of the war dead received 5 taels of silver as compensation. Injured veterans were given silver and grain based on the severity of their injuries. Their first stop back home would always be the county office to collect their dues. Among the crowd, I instantly spotted Lin Hao, Lin Ruru's brother. His face was as pale as paper. His right leg had been severed from the root, forcing him to rely on crutches. One of his eyes was blind. He looked like an empty shell of the man he once was. He hadn't even been at the front lines for half a year, yet he was reduced to this. A wave of sadness swelled in my chest. When the country thrives, the common folk suffer. When it falls, the common folk still suffer. It's always the powerless who carry the burden. As the situation at the front lines grew more dire, it was only a matter of time before war reached our doorstep. I had to accelerate my preparations. Clenching my money bag tightly, I turned and headed to the town square to gather coarse salt and other essentials, before making my way to the livestock market outside the city. The livestock market solely dealt in animals. Cattle in Dezhou could be freely bought and sold, but to discourage people from slaughtering them unnecessarily, the court fixed beef prices at 20 coins per pound. The market frequently bought older livestock for slaughter to stabilize prices. This time, I was there to buy cattle and chickens. With the past few years of famine, livestock was in short supply. Even a skinny water buffalo cost over 15 taels of silver. Without hesitation, I handed over the silver, purchasing a buffalo, a sturdy ox cart, and 10 chicks, which I tossed into the cart before paying in full. The shopkeeper, thrilled to finally meet such a generous customer, excitedly threw in a few extra bundles of straw as a bonus. Lin Ruru was over the moon when she saw the cow and chicks. She ran up to me, showering me with kisses before darting off to cut grass and feed the animals. For a family in dire poverty, a cow and some chickens could change everything. They were symbols of hope for a better tomorrow. After unloading everything at home, I hurried to return the ox cart to the Chow family. When I arrived, Madame Chow shot me a glare filled with a mix of anger and humiliation. Clearly, the earlier scheme had been exposed. I didn't bother engaging with her, leaving the ox cart behind and heading straight home. When Lin Ruru saw that I actually bought a cart home, she was left speechless with surprise. After a long pause, she busied herself feeding the cow and chickens before obediently sitting back down next to me. I lowered my voice. I went to the county town and saw your brother. She froze, her eyes wide with panic. Her eldest brother, Lin Feng, worked for the county office, but her second brother, Lin Hao, was crippled. The mere mention of him was enough to send a wave of unease through her. Scratching my head, I reassured her, "Once you finish making the clothes, I'll take you home in the ox cart. It's been 3 months. It's about time for a visit." Her eyes filled with tears at once. Lin Ruru grew up doted on by her brothers. It was out of fear of burdening her family that she'd gritted her teeth and married me, a good-for-nothing gambling addict. Her voice trembled as she asked, "Husband, how is my brother doing?" I pulled her into my arms, assuring her, "He's alive, and that's what matters. Your family is my family too. As long as I'm here, I won't let them suffer." Lin Ruru cried in my arms for a while before turning around to continue making clothes. She wanted to return home looking her absolute best, so her family would know she hadn't married the wrong man. 2 days later, at the crack of dawn, I hitched the ox cart, packed a small jar of deer blood wine, 5 bushels of rice, some coarse salt, a bit of venison, 3 rabbits, and a mountain chicken. Supporting Lin Ruru, I helped her onto the cart, and we set off. Along the way, Lin Ruru clenched her hands tightly, her knuckles turning white from the tension. I turned around and placed a small pouch of money in her hands. "This is for your family. 2 taels of silver, just a little token of my regard." Lin Ruru looked at my bloodshot eyes, then touched the warm, new cotton jacket she was wearing. She suddenly looked up and, with utter seriousness, said, "Husband, I want to give you children." I was caught off guard and sputtered, "How many?" "8. When? Right now." In the middle of a deserted stretch of road, with no one else around, she decided to insist right then and there. I didn't expect her to be so determined. After some of her antics, we got back on the road. That little episode, though, seemed to ease Lin Ruru's nerves. Laughing and chatting, we eventually arrived in the county town. Her family lived on the east side of town in a modest mud brick courtyard that, while clean, reflected hard times. My father-in-law, Lin Yuan, had been a well-known doctor in the county. But a few years ago, his health gave out, forcing him to sell the pharmacy and make ends meet by collecting and selling herbs. Over the years, with declining fortunes and additional fines imposed because of Lin Ruru, the Lin family's finances had been drained dry. They even sold their land, along with the Qing stone-tiled ancestral house that had been in the family for generations. Forced to move, they ended up in this dirt-walled, tiled-roof home. In the months since Lin Ruru married, her parents' situation had become so dire it was barely sustainable. It was only thanks to her eldest brother, Lin Feng, occasionally sending support that they managed to hold on. Lin Ruru was supposed to have returned to visit her family 3 months after the wedding, but time dragged on, and she'd only just made it. As soon as our ox cart stopped at the courtyard gate, a woman in her 40s rushed out from inside. The moment she saw her daughter, her eyes reddened. Lin Ruru's nose stung, and she immediately jumped off the cart, calling out, "Mother!" The 2 women embraced and cried uncontrollably. After securing the ox, I walked into the courtyard. Her eldest brother wasn't home, as he was probably working. Her second brother, Lin Hao, was reclined on a bamboo chair, his injured leg still in recovery. Beside him, an elderly man who looked like a scholar was changing his bandages. I didn't join the commotion. Instead, I wandered around the courtyard. The yard was desolate enough to chill you. Aside from piles of drying herbs, there was almost nothing else. Lin Yuan had known the kind of person I was before. When his daughter got married, he'd converted all the money he had into her dowry, hoping she'd at least survive. No matter how hard things got, the elderly couple had forced themselves not to tell Lin Feng about their troubles, fearing that the news would make life harder for Lin Ruru in her marital home. When Lin Yuan finished treating the leg, he scowled slightly and motioned me inside. "Son-in-law, come in and have a seat," he said, before telling his wife to bring tea. He and I had only met once at the wedding and hadn't exactly been warm toward one another since. But I spoke first. "Father, Mother, there's no need to busy yourselves. I brought Ruru home and also brought some things for you." With that, I turned to the ox cart and began hauling down the bags of rice, salt, meat, bones, and the like, trip after trip. The pile grew bigger and bigger. Lin Yuan's expression immediately changed. A flicker of alarm passed through his eyes. He knew my prior reputation as a useless scoundrel, so his first assumption at this display was that I was here to annul the marriage. A woman returned to her family like that would see her reputation ruined, becoming the center of neighborhood gossip, unable to lift her head for the rest of her life. His voice was trembling as he rushed forward. "Son-in-law, what's the meaning of this? If you're missing anything, just tell me. As long as you're willing to treat my daughter well, I'll do everything in my power to provide." I froze for a moment. All I did was bring some gifts, and it had terrified my father-in-law like this. Lin Ruru immediately realized what was happening when she heard the commotion. She quickly pulled out the 2 taels of silver and handed it over. "Father, these are gifts from my husband to honor you," she explained, holding back tears. "The past few days, he earned a little money hunting in the mountains. Winter is coming, and he was afraid you and Mother would go cold or hungry. And this silver, keep it for emergencies." I glanced at her and couldn't help but smile inwardly. With just a few words, she had conveyed my intentions perfectly. Still, Lin Yuan seemed skeptical. He stared at me, then at Lin Ruru, making sure we weren't at odds. Only then did he let out a breath of relief. But he immediately shook his head. "No, absolutely not. You two are newlyweds. and your household must need this more. We can't take it. Father, Lin Ruru protested sharply, pointing at Lin Hao. You also have to think of second brother. He's injured and needs nourishment. Besides, my husband has proved himself. We don't lack for these things. She waved her hand toward the outside. That ox cart was just purchased by him. We even have several little chicks at home. Lin Yuan was stunned. The ox cart is yours. You have an ox, chickens. He stumbled, looking shaken. Rushing toward the courtyard gate, he glanced out at the sturdy, newly purchased ox cart. His thin shoulders trembled violently. Back in these times, horses were reserved for the military and off-limits for ordinary folk. Even ox carts and donkey carts were so prohibitively expensive that only wealthy households could afford them. If someone could bring home an ox, if word got out about having an ox cart, people for miles around would be so jealous they wouldn't be able to sleep at night. Unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. My father-in-law's eyes lit up, as if he couldn't decide whether to laugh or cry. My good son-in-law, you've truly made something of yourself. I completely underestimated you. He patted me on the shoulder before turning his head to yell, Wife, bring out that jar of daughter's red. I'm going to have a proper drink with my outstanding son-in-law today. I quickly stopped him. Father, I brought a jar of deer blood Huangjiu as a gift for you. But it's really strong. You need to sip it slowly. My father-in-law glared at me. How strong can it be? Don't underestimate me. Before I could say more, Lin Ruoro brought over the jar, poured him a large bowl, and in one swift motion, my father-in-law downed the whole thing. The next second, his entire face turned red, from his neck up to the top of his head. He coughed nonstop, almost spitting fire in the moment. Asterisk cough. Cough. What kind of liquor is this? Water. Get me water. Asterisk. I bit back my laughter, thinking to myself, I warned you. In this era, most alcohols only had about 10% ABV. Meanwhile, the distilled spirit I'd brought had over 40%. Not feeling the burn would have been impossible. It took a few gulps of water before his breathing settled. Then, despite everything, my father-in-law's eyes gleamed. Good stuff. Where did you get this liquor? I made it myself, I replied. Not only can it be drunk, but it also works as medicine, great for disinfecting wounds too. His interest piqued. You know medicine? Just a little, I said modestly. The alcohol seemed to heighten his excitement, and he laughed heartily. Wonderful, wonderful. Finally, someone to carry on our family's skill set. He pulled me back for more drinking, and the lively mood couldn't be dampened. After food and wine filled everyone up, the conversation turned toward grandchildren. My in-laws started pressuring us to have kids, and Lin Ruoro shyly nodded, making the elders so overjoyed that they couldn't stop smiling. As the topic eventually shifted, I casually asked about the border situation. Lin Hao's face darkened. The northern barbarians have already reached the Qingzhou border, he said quietly. Their spies have even infiltrated the area. If they don't let up after spring, brother-in-law, we might need to borrow your ox cart to head south and escape the chaos. That sent a jolt through my chest. After purchasing the ox, I only had about 20 taels of silver left. That wouldn't stretch far enough to carve out a path forward. Could it really come to packing everyone up and fleeing south? I squashed the thought down. No, this couldn't keep dragging out. I had to come up with a plan, and fast. After the meal, my wife and I bid farewell to my in-laws. My father-in-law, flushed from the drink, hurried into the house with his wife after seeing us off. We shared a knowing smile and rode the ox cart back to the village. Lin Ruoro, tipsy with her cheeks flushed red, leaned close, her voice soft as she pleaded, Let's start making a baby tonight. I didn't answer her, merely flicked the reins to urge the ox into a brisk trot. Just as we reached the village outskirts, we heard chaos erupt near the eastern end. A group of sturdy men rushed by with wooden clubs in hand, clearly fired up about something. What's going on? I hopped off the cart and stopped one of them to ask. Wild boars came down from the mountain and ruined several acres of crops, the man explained. They even injured someone. The village head is losing his mind over this. Then recognizing me, he grabbed my arm and said, Aren't you old Chin? You're good at hunting wild boars, right? Come on, we need you. Initially stunned, I quickly broke into a sly grin. This might just be an opportunity knocking. After rushing home to grab my iron-tipped spear and a quiver full of arrows, I returned with Lin Ruoro, who insisted on tagging along despite her concerns. The entire village depended on a small stretch of fertile, riverside farmland to grow crops, particularly during lean times. Unfortunately, the fields in question were all owned by our village chief, Chow Kong. The more damage the wild boars caused, the more distress Chow Kong felt. And, frankly, the happier it made me. As we arrived, about 20 farmhands stood on the ridges. Down in the field, a massive male boar led a group of young ones, nonchalantly feasting on the crops that remained. In late autumn, food in the mountains was scarce, and what little was left was likely stolen by people. The boars had no choice but to come down the mountain in search of sustenance. From afar, Chow Kong yelled and stomped in agitation. "Get down there and kill them. Anyone who helps will get a share of the meat." I mean it. But everyone knew that male boar was enormous, practically the size of a small bear. It had already injured 3 men who'd made an attempt, leaving them bloody and too scared to try again. Someone spotted me and pointed. Old Chin is here. All heads turned toward me, their eyes filled with a mix of hope and expectation. Even the village women, watching from a distance, rose to their feet and whispered among themselves. My reputation as the hunting god had spread after I reportedly shot a deer clean through the throat with a single arrow. Before I could take a single step, Chow Kong rushed up, furious. "Chin Dagon, you've got a lot of nerve showing your face here. This is all your fault. You killed their piglets, and now they're here for revenge. My fields are destroyed because of you. You owe me compensation." I sidestepped and retaliated with a swift kick, sending him sprawling into the muddy field. What does this have to do with me? Say another word, and I'll let them finish off the rest before doing anything. With that, I planted my spear into the ground, crossed my arms, and stared him down. Chow Kong scrambled to his feet, his face growing redder with every passing second. He looked at the demolished crops and finally cracked under the pressure. "Fine. Hero, I'm begging you. Please get rid of these beasts. I'll give you the respect you deserve. Just tell me what you want." I remained silent. Helpless, Chow Kong grew desperate. He dropped his voice to a whine, nearly screeching. "Grandpa? I'll even call you Grandpa, okay? Will that do? All right. Name your terms. Hurry up." I finally spoke. "Whoever helps me take action gets 20 coins each. For injuries, I'll add another 10 per person." Chow Kang's face twitched, mentally calculating that it would cost a tael of silver. His heart ached, and he sucked in a sharp breath. Through gritted teeth, he cursed. "Fine, fine. You all just think about taking money from the Chow family. If you won't go, I'll go myself. And don't even think about touching a single coin of the Chow family's money." Chow Kong rolled up his sleeves, picked up a wooden stick, and braced himself as he advanced toward the Wild Boar King. The Wild Boar King was happily feasting on a patch of crops. As soon as it noticed him approaching, its round eyes glared at him, and Chow Kang's legs turned to jelly. But the words had already left his mouth, so he had no choice but to bite the bullet. Letting out a roar, he raised the stick and swung it at the Boar King's head. With a crisp crack, the stick shattered into 2 pieces. The Wild Boar King, however, was completely unscathed. Its eyes instantly turned crimson as it charged ferociously toward him. Chow Kong turned and ran. But how could he possibly outrun such a beast? In the next moment, he was sent flying, and a gash opened up across his hip and thigh. He landed heavily, nearly unconscious. If it hadn't been for the fact that the boar's charge propelled him out of its view, and the beast's attention shifted back to the greens it was eating, he might not have lived to see another day. Clutching his bloody wound, Chow Kong crawled up the embankment with his face pale as paper. He finally understood that life was far more valuable than money. Is it all about the money? Fine, I agree. Chow Kong roared, acknowledging his defeat. Watching his miserable state, I couldn't help but laugh. Drawing my spear, I leapt onto the higher embankment and waved my hand. "Everyone, you heard what the village head said. Help, and you'll get paid. But I'm not here to do charity work. When the time comes, follow my commands exactly on how to act. Once the boar is killed, everything, good or bad, belongs to me. I'll distribute the meat based on merit. If anyone disagrees, leave now. If you agree, step forward." People exchanged glances for a moment, and most of them stepped up. The few who hesitated didn't want to miss out and quickly followed. Though my terms weren't generous and I was firm, they were far more reliable than the empty promises painted by Chow Kong. Just a few days prior, Gunger, Haigu, and Dashin chopped down trees for me. A tree earned them a bag of grain and a piece of meat. Their families ate meat every day, making the other villagers envy themselves to madness. The villagers had long wanted to follow me, but Lin Ru, my household's anchor, always said we lacked enough rice and meat to take on more people. That lucrative opportunity had everyone itching for a chance. Now that it was finally here, who wouldn't jump at it? I also knew that others were not entirely trustworthy. That's why I planned only to use the 3 men who had previously proven themselves. All 3 were present, so I split everyone into 3 groups and assigned one to each of the 3 men. Listen carefully. When dealing with wild boars, you need to use your brains. Don't try to face them head-on. On open ground, you can't outrun them. Stay in the woods and climb up trees if needed. Each group should lure 1 or 2 boars into the forest. Carry sharp stones in your pockets. Someone will provoke the boar to chase after them, then climb up a tree at the last second, forcing the beast to collide with it. The rest of you will pelt its head with those sharp stones. Take turns attacking and exhaust it. Then I'll step in to finish the job. Got it, got it. I sent everyone to the riverbank to gather smooth pebbles, positioning them in hidden ambushes near the forest's edge. Then, standing atop the embankment, I drew my bow and nocked an arrow, aiming straight at the largest, bulliest wild boar king among the herd. From a mere 20 meters away, the iron arrowhead was more than capable of piercing through bone. The bowstring twanged, and the iron arrow zipped through the air, right between the boar king's eyes. For a moment, the spectators stood stunned. Then they erupted into a cheer so thunderous, it shook the skies. The wounded boar king let out an enraged roar and, with the arrow still lodged in its skull, charged at me full force. Its tusks, nearly 8 inches long, made everyone's hair stand on end. However, having been struck in the head, it only managed to charge a few meters before crashing down, colliding with the embankment, spewing blood from its mouth, and dying on the spot. Its downfall was like a spark igniting a fuse. The rest of the boars, battered and enraged by the rain of stones, scattered in an instant. They split into 3 groups and charged toward the 3 teams. I was in excellent form, firing arrows one after another with deadly precision. Under the villagers' cover, I took down each boar with a single, clean shot. The villagers cheered as they dragged the dead boars into a pile. Gathering around me, they clamored to claim credit for their contributions. At that moment, I felt a hand quietly land on my shoulder. Brother, in good times, we share blessings. In hardships, we endure together. Today's haul of wild boars, give me half. Otherwise, it's not fair. It was Chow Tai, taking advantage of his position as the village head's brother. Known for being arrogant and shameless, he had earned quite a reputation for thick skin. I frowned and shrugged off his hand. Get your hand off me. We're not close. Chow Tai's face darkened on the spot. Grabbing my arm, he threatened, "You've got dirt on you that I can use. Don't push me into tearing things up. It won't end well for anyone." I turned back, my gaze sharp as a blade. The moment my killing intent washed over him, Chow Tai instinctively loosened his grip. Still trying to bluster his way through, he sneered, "No matter how tough you are, you wouldn't dare touch me. I'm a person." With that, he even reached out to pat my face. I caught his wrist mid-swing and twisted. A loud crack echoed as his joint popped audibly. Chow Tai screamed. I shouted, forcing him to his knees, and with a single palm strike to his shoulder, crack. I dislocated his joint in an instant. The scream that followed, sounding eerily like a pig's howl, stunned everyone into silence, even freezing Chow Kong in place. Stepping over to the pile of wild boars, I plucked out my spear. With a sharp spin kick to the spear's rear, it took off like a whistling dragon. A flash of cold light streaked across the air, asterisk thunk, asterisk, embedding itself between Chow Tai's legs, perilously close to his most vital area. Chow Tai's soul nearly left his body as he screamed and collapsed, rolling backward into the field ridge. With a cold glare, I said, "Compared to me, you're not even worth as much as a pig." I yanked my spear from the ground and turned to organize dividing up the hogs. This whole pig slaughter operation wasn't just about meat. It was about establishing authority and trust. Killing Chow Tai outright would have only stirred up trouble and earned me the label of a tyrant. Not worth it. Scaring the living daylights out of him would do just fine. Seeing Chow Tai get what he deserved, the villagers eagerly crowded around, applauding. "Old Sheen, you did our village of Xiaohe a huge favor. Big brother Dagon, that was badass just now. Sheen bro, teach me that move with the spear flying kick, won't you?" Grinning, I welcomed their praise. Riding that momentum, I began portioning out the meat. Gung Air, Black Dog, Dashin, you guys led the charge today. Each of you gets 2 full legs and 5 extra pounds. As for everyone else, 5 pounds of meat per person plus 2 pounds of innards. Line up and I'll hand it out. There were 7 wild boars in the field. The alpha alone weighed 400 or 500 pounds. Just cleaning out the organs at home was going to be a nightmare, so I figured, why not distribute everything here and now? I wasn't stingy either. Moments like these are when you need tight control over the hearts and minds of your people. What? 5 pounds of meat and 2 pounds of innards. The group of men instantly erupted. 5 pounds of pork, especially during famine years, was an almost unthinkable fortune. In normal times, just getting half a pound during New Year's would have been a luxury. Even the village chief probably wouldn't dare to eat this extravagantly. Dividing the spoils among 20-some villagers only took up about 1 boar's worth of meat. I was careful to slice everything evenly, ensuring fair shares of fat and lean cuts. For the intestines and organs, I let them pick what they wanted. Not a peep of complaint. The 3 leaders each got their 2 giant boar legs, tying them around their necks with rope. The sight was absolutely mouth-watering, but no one was envious. After all, they'd been my right-hand men for a while. This was what people meant by getting the meat first if you get close early. The rest of the villagers, meanwhile, were busy calculating in their heads. It's not too late to team up with him now. Once the meat was distributed and the majority of people happily headed home, I held Gung Air and the other 2 back. There were simply too many boars for me to process alone, so I asked them to stay and help break things down. Tonight, we'd feast with a celebratory pig roast banquet. I left them to it while I walked Lin Ruru back home to fetch the ox cart. Just thinking about how much silver these wild hogs would fetch, at least tens of taels, put a spring in my step. But as we reached a small hill on the edge of the village, my stomach dropped. In the distance, by my house gate, a leaf that I had deliberately wedged there as a marker had fallen to the ground. Something was wrong. I'd always been cautious. Leaving that leaf in the door crack was my way of telling if anyone had entered. Ever since that fiasco with Hitsuetsue, I couldn't afford to drop my guard even for a moment. Ruru, wait here, I instructed. With no hunting bow or spear, having left them behind in the field, all I had was a small hatchet. Gripping it tight, I told Lin Ruru to hide behind a tree while I snuck along the wall, approaching the house quietly. The moment I pushed the door open, a blade flashed down from above. I raised my hatchet to block it, grabbing the attacker's elbow and kicking at his knees, sending him tumbling down with a yell. Another knife came sweeping in from the side. I had no time to turn and react. I dodged forward instead, slipping deeper into the courtyard. Bang! The courtyard gate slammed shut behind me. Standing in my path was another man gripping a cleaver, his face twisted with a cruel grin. From the house emerged 4 burly thugs. Leading them was a one-eyed man, one of the top enforcers for the town's gambling den. Known for his ruthless cruelty, he was the boss's trusted lackey. The one-eyed man sneered maliciously. Well, if it isn't Qin-Chi. Heard you've been making waves lately. Even bought yourself an ox cart. Huh? Getting rich now, huh? And forgot all about us brothers. With a wave of his hand, the thugs quickly encircled me. The one-eyed man licked his lips and chuckled darkly. Where's your little wifey? A real peach, she is. Don't worry, Chunhua Brothel's been looking for a new star performer. You said it yourself before. If you couldn't pay off your debts, you'd use her as collateral, didn't you? Money we can discuss later. But the girl? No way are you getting out of that. I immediately understood what they were after. These men weren't just here to collect debt. They wanted both my wife and money. And in the end, they'd probably torch the courtyard too. The smug look on the one-eyed man's face made it clear he thought I had no way out of this. What he didn't know was that it wasn't me who was trapped with them. It was them who had sealed their own fate by entering my courtyard. Not one of them would leave this place alive. Feigning submission, I swept my eyes around the courtyard. Within 3 seconds, I'd calculated all possible moves and improvised a plan. Then, in a flash, I lunged forward. In just an instant, I closed the distance to the one-eyed man. That was brutal. The axe gleamed as it came down, and instinctively, he raised his hand to block. Swish, a sharp flash of cold light, and his right hand was severed at the wrist. Blood gushed out instantly, spraying everywhere. He let out a piercing scream and stumbled backward. With a practiced movement, I twisted my wrist and brought the axe back down in a reverse grip. Crack! The axe splintered his jaw, shattering it completely. The thug closest to me froze in place, momentarily stunned. Just as he raised his fist, I swung the axe, slicing through his throat in one clean cut. He crumpled to the ground immediately. Two more thugs at the back seized the opportunity to draw their crude blades, attempting to flank me. I sidestepped swiftly, closing in on the one on the left. With a calculated strike, I severed the arm holding his weapon, and blood splattered onto everyone nearby. The guy on the right swung his blade at me. I rolled into the house, grabbing the door panel as a shield, then slipped out through the window behind me. Turning back swiftly, I cleaned up the remaining threats with a series of precise strikes. After a few grim sounds, asterisk crack asterisk and thud, the courtyard fell into a dead silence. Standing upright, I wiped the axe clean on one of the bodies, though its blade had dulled from the relentless use. No wonder it didn't feel as smooth during the swings. The quality of iron tools in this era really left a lot to be desired. I opened the door again and waved to Lin Ruru, who was hiding behind a tree. With just one brief encounter, several lives had ended. Lin Ruru had witnessed my decisive strike that killed Huang Xin before, and she'd seen my ruthless resolve poisoning He Chui. But those were just ragtag thugs and gossipy village women. They were nothing compared to the enforcers that worked for the gambling den. The skills and killing intent she saw today weren't something she could associate with the drunken husband who used to fumble to find the door after a night of overdrinking. She shook her head in disbelief. So much had happened recently that she'd convinced herself I had simply become more reliable. But in this moment, she finally realized just how terrifying her husband truly was. "Are you an assassin who's retired?" She hesitated. "Trained since you were young, but tired of a life of bloodshed. So you came back to the village, pretending to be a gambling addict?" This little girl had clearly read way too many storybooks. I wiped the blood from my face, pretending to be mysterious as I tossed a used cloth over her head. "Don't ask." Lin Ruru pulled the cloth off, the strong smell of blood making her nose wrinkle. Her small eyes glimmered as she watched my retreating back. When she had married me, all she knew was that my parents had passed away and that I spent my days drinking and gambling. Who could have guessed that behind this seemingly useless exterior lay a man so formidable? The more she thought about it, the more she convinced herself it must be true. I had simply grown tired of hiding my true self. How else could she explain how I'd become an entirely different person overnight? Unaware of the mental gymnastics she was doing, I dragged the bodies to the back of the courtyard and hastily tidied up. Then I hitched the ox cart and headed out. When Gung Er and the others arrived, they noticed some blood in the courtyard but didn't find it suspicious at all. After all, I'd been butchering pigs and deer recently. How could anywhere be spotless? The four of us worked until nearly midnight, processing the wild boars we'd caught. Before we left, I handed each of them a small flask of deer blood wine as thanks. I even offered some extra grain, but they adamantly refused to take any. While chatting, I casually asked if the village had any brave and honest young lads. Assuming I needed help chopping trees, the three of them rattled off several names, which I made note of. After arranging the pork neatly on the ox cart, I went back inside and retrieved a peculiar object. It looked like a bow, but not exactly. It was longer than her arm and had an unusual grip. Lin Ruru had never seen anything like it before. I had forged it when I'd gotten the ox cart made. She thought it was just some kind of cart accessory and never asked about it. Seeing me fiddling with it in the middle of the night, Lin Ruru couldn't help but ask, "Husband, what is that?" I attached the freshly cured deer sinew string, fine-tuning it under the glow of the lamp. A crossbow. It's even more powerful than a standard bow. The foot-operated crossbow was as tall as my hip when stood upright. Its materials were solid, and its force was tremendous, capable of shooting clean through 3 men lined up. I'd been to the county town a few times, but no one seemed to use weapons like this. It seemed the Great Zhou dynasty didn't have crossbows. I didn't make this to impress the court. It was for dealing with tigers, bears, or other ferocious beasts. Of course, in a pinch, it could slit throats just the same. I'd even made Lin Ruru a small handheld crossbow, intending to teach her how to defend herself at some point. Carrying a quiver of arrows, I headed toward the door. Before stepping out, I casually tossed, "I'm heading out for a bit. Get some rest." Hearing I was leaving this late, Lin Ruru immediately panicked. "Husband, where are you going?" The more she thought about it, the more anxious she became. Her words came out all wrong. Is it because I haven't been good enough? If you like the girls at Chunhwa Pavilion, I can go learn from them. Her voice trembled as she clung to my arm, pressing her soft form against me, her eyes brimming with grievance. What nonsense are you talking about? I placed the crossbow on the ox cart, turned back, and said in a low voice, the gambling den's men suffered a loss today. They won't take it lying down. I have to strike first before they regroup. I'll be back by morning. Oh, she bit her lip, reluctantly letting go. I got on the cart, flicked the reins, and rode off, my silhouette as cold and sharp as a blade. Lin Ruru's heart tightened with warmth, only to chill again a moment later. The gambling den at night would be the most dangerous, teeming with enforcers. The one-eyed brute from earlier was likely just one of many. How could I possibly emerge unscathed, armed with just a crossbow? Regret gnawed at her as she chased after the cart, stopping at the edge of the slope outside the courtyard. But by then, I was already gone. An hour later, at Onkong, the county gambling den, I lay flat on the roof of a residential house, placing my quiver beside me, eyes fixed on the stream of silver coins flowing in and out of the gambling establishment. Before the time of a single incense stick could pass, they'd already raked in 200 to 300 taels of silver. The profit was terrifyingly high, but the place was crawling with muscle, at least 20 guards, inside and out. That Boss Zhang really spared no expense. I wasn't in a rush to act. I needed to wait for Boss Zhang to show himself. After enduring another half incense stick's time, there he was at last, a portly figure waddling into view. The head enforcer, Old Yen, leaned in close and whispered something into his ear. Boss Zhang's face darkened, and he immediately exploded into a tirade. Useless fools. Can't even handle one gambling addict for me. I feed you lot for nothing. From my spot on the roof, my crossbow was already aimed squarely at that generous slice of fat around his neck. Twang. The bowstring snapped. The bolt shot through the night sky. Like a flash of lightning tearing open the darkness, it struck true, straight through Boss Zhang's throat. Thwack! He staggered, clutching at his bloody neck, his eyes bulging as he stumbled backward. Gurgling noisily, his final glimpse of this world was a fleeting shadow darting off the opposite rooftop. Sniper! Old Yen instantly realized the boss was a goner. He dove under a gambling table, roaring for the others. A split second later, thud, a muffled impact cut through the noise. A crossbow bolt punched through the table and buried itself deep into Old Yan's shoulder. Arg, what the? How are we supposed to fight like this? The shock of the bolt piercing through the table and nearly an inch into flesh snapped what little resolve Old Yen had left. Gritting his teeth, he broke the shaft of the arrow with his knife, then scrambled toward the side courtyard, trying to make his escape through a window. With the boss dead now, sticking around meant death. But just as he landed on the side courtyard, the roof tiles overhead groaned ominously. Every hair on Old Yan's body stood on end. That primal, bone-chilling fear of death seized him. He froze. With a sudden, desperate burst of courage, he swung his blade upward at the sound. In the moonlight, a gleaming arc of silver came down faster. Snap, shearing his arm clean off. A beat later, there was an icy sensation at his neck, followed by a surge of warmth, his own blood gushing out. Old Yen knew this was the end. As he collapsed, he caught a final glimpse of that masked intruder turning away. 3 battered knives hung from the figure's back, the signature blades of the casino's enforcers. This was an inside job. Inside the casino, chaos erupted. Patrons screamed, scrambling for the exits. A few greedy ones clawed at the silver on the tables, only to be dragged out for a beating by the enforcers. In the confusion, no one noticed a quiet figure slipping in through a side window. Whoosh! I moved without hesitation, my twin blades slicing through the crowd. The enforcers I brushed past didn't have time to react. They fell one by one in my wake. Each motion was as fluid as the wind, but every strike was lethal. By the time 7 or 8 bodies hit the floor, Black Wolf, dragging the lifeless Boss Zhang toward the back courtyard, finally realized what was happening. He rasped out a furious yell. The masked one. Get him! The remaining guards snapped to attention, sweeping the room for me. Darting to a gambling table, I grabbed a feeble, cowering patron and yanked him upright, holding him in front of me. You think using a hostage will work? Black Wolf sneered, tossing Boss Zhang's body aside. He slipped on his steel knuckles with a loud clang and bellowed. Everyone get him! 10 taels to whoever brings him in alive. Who said anything about needing a hostage? I shoved the trembling gambler forward while flipping the table over, using the momentum to launch myself straight at Black Wolf. Of the casino's 3 main enforcers, One-Eyed Dragon, Old Yen, and Black Wolf, only Black Wolf was still standing. As long as I took him out, the rest were nothing but spineless thugs. Sensing trouble, Black Wolf hauled 2 of his own guards in front of him as shields, then swung a crushing punch the moment he spotted an opening. With 2 swift arcs of my blades, I cut down the guards in my path. Ducking under his fist, I drove my foot into his midsection. Black Wolf barely managed to recover when I slammed right up to his chest, jabbing my blade deep into him. Asterisk thunk. Asterisk. His eyes went wide. He raised a hand to retaliate, but I followed up with a rapid-fire series of stabs. Each strike landed with a wet squelch, 7 or 8 times in quick succession. The pain drained every ounce of fight he had. Half collapsing onto my shoulder, he gasped weakly. Who are you? Someone you don't want as your enemy. I shrugged him off, letting him crumple to the ground with a cold thud. Then, turning my steely gaze on the remaining guards, I froze them in place. A shriek cut through the tension, breaking the spell. No one knew who screamed first, but the enforcers flinched collectively, a chill running down each of their spines. Clap, clap. A few heavy steps echoed as I extinguished one lantern after another, plunging the room into thick, oppressive darkness. Somewhere outside, a small-time errand boy who'd been playing dead burst through the main doors, fleeing toward the county office as if his life depended on it. Inside, I stepped out into the open street, my crossbow already drawn. Thwack! At 30 meters away, the bolt hit home, plunging into the boy's back. He dropped instantly, not even managing a scream before hitting the ground, lifeless. Soon, flames engulfed the gambling den, their tongues licking skyward as the inferno consumed it whole. The glow of the blaze painted half of Oncon County in an ominous red. By the time dawn broke, a lone ox cart rolled into town from the woods, headed to the morning market. Outside the gambling hall, a dozen constables were busy counting and transporting charred corpses. Standing by the doorway, blocking the onlookers, was Lin Feng. I casually strolled past with a cart full of pork. Lin Feng raised his hand to greet me. I grinned, nodded, and then pointed to the meat in the cart before pointing toward the market. Lin Feng gave me a big thumbs up, feeling both grateful and respectful, though he couldn't leave his post at the moment. At the morning market, I sold some of the meat at a low price first. Then, I went around the county town, visiting restaurants and a few wealthy households, eventually selling off all the meat. Over 1,000 pounds of wild boar meat, including bones, blood, and offal, brought in a total of 97 taels and 4 chien. On the way back, I grabbed some rice, flour, and other supplies, packing the cart to the brim. What no one knew was that beneath the cart, a watermelon-sized bundle was tied. Inside were copper coins, silver fragments, small gold ingots, and even a stack of banknotes. The ride home felt unusually fast, and before I realized it, I was at my doorstep. From a distance, I saw Lin Ru standing in the yard, her frail figure resembling a stone statue perpetually watching and waiting. When she spotted the ox cart appearing on the road, her body trembled violently, and with a loud sob, she collapsed to the ground. Panicked, I jumped off the cart and rushed over, only to discover that she had stubbornly waited in the yard all through the night. It was only after seeing me return that she let out a relieved sigh and immediately fainted from exhaustion. I carried her back inside, unloaded the cart, and returned to her bedside. By then, Lin Ruru had gradually regained consciousness. As soon as she opened her eyes, she saw me sitting beside the bed, smiling and holding a few pieces of paper. "Ru, take a look at what I've got here." Her face turned as pale as a ghost. Without even glancing at the papers, she slapped them out of my hand, threw herself into my embrace, and started sobbing uncontrollably, her whole body trembling. Ru only wants her husband, not banknotes, not money, nothing else. Even if we live in poverty, as long as you're here, I can endure anything. You are my sky, my earth. You scare me to death. You're never allowed to leave me alone again. I froze for a moment, then glanced down at the banknotes scattered on the floor. Instead of picking them up, I chuckled softly. Didn't I come back safely? I softened my tone and spoke gently. By the way, do we still have the pawn ticket for the land deed? Yes, I've kept it safe. She wiped her tears and nodded, her voice weak but steady. Why do you ask, husband? Are you thinking of redeeming the land? Back then, to scrape together gambling money, my previous self had pawned not only Lin Ruru's dowry, but also the family's farmland. If not for her fierce persistence, even the land under our house would have been lost. The dowry pawn ticket was torn up in the street by my former self. He never had any intention of redeeming it. The land's ticket, however, was left intact, either because Lin Ruru cried and begged to keep it, or because the former him thought he could gamble his way to riches. Dragging her fatigued body, Lin Ruru dug up an earthen jar from the backyard and retrieved several worn, dirty pieces of paper. I unfolded them and saw the details. 3 acres and 3 fun of farmland pawned for 3 taels and 3 chin of silver at Hengxiang Pawn Shop. I vowed sternly, in a few days, I'm redeeming this land. After that, we'll be a wealthy household. Mark my words, one day, I'll buy the entire Xia village. Lin Ruru was dumbfounded. The entire village? That would cost a fortune. Are you out of your mind? After coaxing her to rest, I headed to the courtyard to count the silver and coins. In total, 860 taels and banknotes, over 527 taels in fragmented silver, and 5 or 6,000 copper coins. The money was enough. I set my sights on the biggest open land in the village and made my first plan, building kilns to produce bricks. After freshening up, I collapsed into bed and slept until the afternoon. When I woke, Lin Ruru was already in the yard, cooking meat porridge. She brought it to my bedside to serve me as I got up, though her face was still alarmingly pale. Through gritted teeth, she suddenly spoke. Husband, I thought long and hard last night. This won't work. I have a bold request to make. I continued wiping my face and replied, Go ahead. Unexpectedly, she dropped to her knees. I want to arrange a concubine for you. After so many nights together, there's still no sign of a child. It's my fault for being useless. If there's no heir within a year, you'll be drafted into the military. Without you, I can't go on living. I was stunned speechless. She carried on, her voice trembling but urgent. I already have someone in mind, my childhood friend. She's beautiful, capable, and grounded. If you agree, I'll even give up my position as your wife. I'll serve as a concubine or a maid, whatever it takes. Just please, listen to me. I helped her up and gave a quick response. Ruru, you silly girl. Your friend might have already married and had children. I get your intention, and I appreciate it. But as for taking a concubine, I have my own plans. Lin Ruru, however, was determined. No, she wouldn't have married yet. She's too proud for that. Only someone like you could match her. She began rummaging for a pen and paper, saying, I'll write to her now and ask about her situation. Stretching, I walked outside and was surprised to find 4 young men standing nervously in the yard. When they saw me, they straightened up immediately, their hands clasped behind their backs like schoolboys caught misbehaving. What's going on with you guys? Waited in the yard, and as soon as I saw them, I recognized them as the group I went with yesterday to hunt wild boars. Brother Chin, we want to learn how to hunt from you. I want to join too. My father says you have to be skilled to survive. While talking, they handed over the bags they were carrying. Inside were wild greens, rice, a few copper coins, and the wild boar meat they got yesterday, all untouched and brought back entirely. I nodded and had Lin Ruru accept it. Rules are rules. What are your names? I asked. Wang Hu, Li Si, Wang Ermatzi, and Zhou Nong. Wang Hu, Li Si, and Zhou Nong all seemed honest and reliable. But Wang Ermatzi, with his rat-like face and shifty eyes, looked less trustworthy. His bag, topped with a few wild greens, was filled with weeds underneath to make it look fuller. I'm too busy to teach you real skills, I said. I'll give you a few practice bows and some simple traps. They're enough for hunting pheasants and rabbits. No need for formalities like taking me as your master. Consider these bows and traps rented. When you catch prey, you'll give me 30% as the rental fee. If you can make it through to the spring, these bows will be yours for free. The 4 of them were overjoyed and agreed immediately. I took out the bows, strung them, and handed out a few sharpened arrows. The worst bow was tossed directly to Wang Ermatzi. He'd have to make do with that. I intended to remind them to practice for a day before heading up the mountain, but Wang Ermatzi instigated the others, convincing them to dive straight into the deep forest. Later, inside the house, Lin Ruru was sorting the items they brought when a fist-sized round, brown lump with strange patterns rolled out of the bag. Thinking back to the poisonous mushrooms incident, she was startled and ran to ask me, "Husband, look at this. Is it poisonous?" I took it from her and immediately recognized it, my eyes lighting up. "This is taro," I said, trying to contain my excitement. "It's filling, hearty, and easy to grow. If we start cultivating it, the entire village could survive on it. This big one can't be kept for seed, though. It's only good for eating. Rue, see if there are any smaller ones in there." Sure enough, after rummaging through, Lin Ruru found a few taros the size of quail eggs. "Put the small ones in a clay jar and plant them in our backyard come spring," I instructed her. "As for the big one, steam it tonight, mash it up, sprinkle some salt on it. I promise it'll be the tastiest thing you've ever eaten." Lin Ruru looked at the ugly lump skeptically, unsure whether to believe me. Softly, I added with a grin, "Though no matter how good it is, it can't be better than you, Ruru." Putting the taro down, I mischievously pulled her into my arms. Seeing the playful glint in my eye, Lin Ruru blushed and gently punched my chest. "Husband, you're impossible. It's broad daylight, and you're saying things like this to embarrass me." Laughing, I swept her up in my arms and carried her inside the house. After spending the better half of the morning worrying about her, I wasn't planning on holding back now that she had gotten some rest. By mid-afternoon, when the sun started slanting westward, Lin Ruru came out supporting herself on the doorframe. Her hair was a mess, and her face was flushed, too shy to lift her head. Following my instructions, she peeled, chopped, and steamed the taro, then mashed it with a wooden pestle, mixing in salt and lard. She plated the taro mash into 2 small bowls. I handed her a spoon. With her eyes half closed in skepticism, she hesitantly took a bite. The softened taro melted in her mouth, paired with the richness of the lard, making it savory and silky, with a faint sweetness lingering afterward. She was stunned, speechless. Seeing how much she loved it, I gave her my bowl as well and turned to prepare some white rice porridge. Lin Ruru tried to protest, but eventually gave in under my insistence, tears welling up in her eyes as she ate. After I finished eating, I stretched lazily, intending to go for a stroll through the village. I planned to buy some pawn slips for farmland at low prices when I spotted 3 figures staggering toward me in the distance. It was Wang Hu and the others. I recognized them instantly. "Brother Qin, help. Something terrible has happened," they cried out, grabbing onto me as if I were their last hope. Dragging along with them was someone injured, bloodied beyond recognition. My face darkened as I took in the sight. All 4 of them had injuries, but the man they were supporting was in the worst shape. His face was shredded, his stomach gashed open, and his clothes barely held his organs in place. He was knocking on death's door. "What happened?" I asked, suppressing my anger. "A bear. We stumbled onto a bear," they stammered in fear, their voices trembling. "It stood as tall as a house. The arrows didn't work at all." I couldn't help but sneer. Of course, dull arrows wouldn't work. "I told you not to rush into the mountains." "Who's the one who led the charge?" "Wang or Matsi," they muttered. I looked down, only to realize that the half-dead man they brought back was Wang or Matsi himself. My frustration eased for a moment. "Well, there's no saving him now. Bring him back to bury him," I said coldly. "As for the rest of you, these are just superficial wounds. Take this silver and get some herbs from the healer in the neighboring Daya village to treat yourselves." I tossed them half a liang of silver. Startled by the amount, the 3 survivors fumbled over their words, both grateful and full of guilt. They repeatedly promised never to act so recklessly again. "I will definitely repay the favor." Wang Ermatzi was pretty much the same as his former self, an idle loner, the kind of person no one would even bother to take care of after his death. But Brother Qin, what about that bear? We ran into it right after entering the forest, and it's way too close to the village. Before winter sets in, it'll be searching for food. What if it comes all the way into the village? Wang, whose anxious sweat was almost dripping onto the ground. I furrowed my brow. There had long been traces of tigers in these mountains, and this area was likely part of a tiger's territory. So why would a bear suddenly intrude? Could it have forced its way in just to find a spot to hibernate? "I'll take care of the bear. You guys head back and rest up. Stay out of the woods for a few days." I pointed to the bag and asked, "Who brought these brown fruits?" Zhou Nong chimed in immediately. "Brother Qin, that was Wang Ermatzi. That shameless guy. He even brought some bitter yams when he tried to apprentice himself to you. Those yams are so bitter and astringent. Nobody touches them even during famine times." I chuckled. That's not yam, it's taro. Taro thrives in damp environments, which is rare in this region, so it's no surprise the villagers don't recognize it. After figuring out where the taro was found, I sent the men back to rest. I planned to track the bear the next day and dig up more taro along the way. Once I buy back the farmland, I'll plant it all in the spring. Bright and early the following day, I strapped my hunting bow to my back, armed myself with a crossbow, a long spear, and an axe, and headed into the mountains, following the trail Wang Hu and the others described. The area where the bear had been spotted was near the headwaters of a small river, in a direction I hadn't gone before, but close to the edges of a tiger's domain. Not long after, I came across some half-dried bear droppings. Poking at it with a stick, it seemed devoid of any fresh food. The bear, injured from the previous encounter and likely finding no food, must have retreated directly, following its tracks, scent, and claw marks for a few miles. I confirmed the bear had left the vicinity of the village, allowing myself a moment's relief before turning toward a mountain ravine. As I advanced, I spotted something blood-brown lying far ahead. My stomach sank, and I instinctively grabbed my hunting bow before approaching cautiously. It was a horse, a dead one, still wearing its reins. The horse's belly had been brutally ripped open, with most of its innards devoured. Maggots were crawling all over its wounds, indicating it had been dead for at least a couple of days. A chill ran down my spine as I scanned the area. About 30 meters away, in a small gully, lay the body of a human. The person's clothing was bizarre, completely unlike what any residents of the Great Zhou would wear. My heart leapt into my throat. Was this one of the barbarians? I hurried over to the gully and confirmed it at a glance. A felt hat, animal hide garments, calfskin boots, a headdress with silver ornaments on the front, and 2 large braids draped over the chest. If this wasn't a barbarian, what else could it be? I remembered Lin Hao mentioning that the barbarians had invaded the northern border, pushing the battlefront as far as the outskirts of Qingzhou. Supposedly, scouts had even infiltrated Qingzhou's territory. Now the evidence was laid out in front of me, a dead horse and human, proving that these mountains were no longer safe. From the memories of my former self, I knew that beyond the ice-covered steppe of the north stood the kingdom of True Liao, which faced the Great Zhou across the Tsungyun mountain range. While Yi province of the Great Zhou, located on the other side of the range, was typically secure, should that small tail to Yi province's east fall into True Liao's hands, Qingzhou would be entirely exposed. It was no wonder True Liao had set its sights on Qingzhou, especially considering its prosperity and light toll from previous disasters. Likely, True Liao intended to plunder this fertile land before the first snow fell. The thought sent chills down my spine. Here I was, unprepared, yet the stench of war was already suffocating. Examining the barbarian's body closely, I found only a shallow claw mark on his back. It wasn't a fatal wound. What killed him was likely being flung from his horse, tumbling down the slope, and smashing into a rock. The claw marks, similar to the wounds on the horse, were clearly from a large feline predator. The clues led back once more to the tiger. The scout must have fled into the woods to evade pursuit, only to meet his end at the tiger's claws, a truly pitiful demise. But there was just one man and one horse here, yet the tracks revealed more than one set of hoof prints. Where had the other person gone? Following the scattered trail, I reached a point where several small streams converged. This was the head of the unnamed river that flowed through Xiahe village. Peering from behind a large stone, I saw where the streams pooled into a flat creek bed before forming a proper river. Around the creek, tall trees loomed and the terrain was treacherous, with many caves scattered about. The hoofprints led toward a muddy patch near the creek, but stopped there. Shifting position, I finally spotted a concealed cave entrance beside the water, where a dappled gray horse with the same reins and saddle as the previous one stood tethered. Someone, another barbarian, was still alive inside that cave. Equipping my crossbow, I crouched low, lying in wait. Dawn was the easiest time to catch someone off guard. Half an hour later, as the sky brightened further, a short figure finally emerged from the cave. He scanned his surroundings vigilantly, then went to the creek to fill a water skin and eat some dried meat. Afterward, he dragged a corpse out of the cave, hoisted it onto his shoulder, and headed toward the water. 3 people. I immediately realized something was off. The barbarian carrying the body approached the water's edge. It was clear he intended to dump the corpse into the headwaters to contaminate the water supply and incite an epidemic. Damn, he really got his way. Now both Little River Village and Big River Village are in trouble. The sound of the crossbow echoed, and an iron bolt cut through the air. The barbarian had incredible skills in pinpointing sounds, instantly ducking behind a corpse without even taking time to fully gauge the direction of the shot. A dull thud followed. The bolt had pierced his companion's stomach and ricocheted over his forehead before flying out. The barbarian cursed loudly, threw down the corpse, and charged toward the gray horse. Both sides of the area were blocked. His only chance to escape was to ride the horse and risk breaking through the steep creek bed. Without hesitation, I scrambled up a tall tree. The crisp sound of hooves echoed as the barbarian clung to the side of the horse, keeping his body fully shielded to avoid being an easy target for me. Little did he know, I was already waiting for him in the trees. I couldn't let this guy escape. Bringing him to the county office would earn me a handsome bounty. Letting out a loud, strange shout, I grabbed a vine and swung downward. Startled by the sudden noise, the barbarian raised his head, only to see a dark shadow crashing down upon him. With a solid kick to his shoulder, the barbarian was knocked clean off the horse, which stumbled and plunged into the creek. The barbarian scrambled to his feet, not thinking of counterattacking but instead letting loose a sharp whistle. If his horse ran off, he was done for. Fwoosh, fwoosh. Landing in the creek with a splash, I fished out my long spear and swung it in 2 sweeping arcs. Being a scout wasn't for the faint-hearted. The barbarian quickly drew his curved blade, dodged the first swing, blocked the second with force, and then pivoted back toward the gray horse, which was just regaining its footing. Trying to run again, huh? My anger flared as I pulled the axe from my belt and hurled it. Hearing the wind behind him, the barbarian quickly ducked down. However, I wasn't aiming to kill. The axe had been thrown blunt side first. His crouching turned out to be a mistake, and the blunt end of the axe struck the back of his head with a resounding thump. The barbarian passed out on the spot. Dragging him out of the water, I tied his hands and feet before tossing him up onto the bank. Then I turned to deal with the stubborn gray horse. The horse, seemingly loyal to its master, neighed in defiance, thrashing about. Grabbing the reins firmly, I yanked hard, forcing it to the ground. The horse lifted its head and met my dagger-sharp glare, quickly calming down with a heavy snort of surrender. Smarten up, cooperate, and I'll find you a mare. If you don't, I'll make you into one. The horse glanced nervously at the gleaming axe in my hand, its big eyes growing suspiciously sincere. I hoisted the unconscious barbarian onto the horse's back, grabbed the reins, and started walking downstream along the creek. Along the way, I dug up a sizable bundle of taro, tying it securely together. The gray horse, now dragging its feet and frothing from exhaustion, dared not make a sound. The axe was still strapped right beside its belly. On the way down the mountain, the barbarian regained consciousness. Trussed up on the horse like a worm, he squirmed and wriggled in protest. I wasn't about to deal with his nonsense, so I knocked him out with a single punch. When I reached the outskirts of the village, passing the fields near the riverside, I spotted Chow Kong bustling around with a few farm hands. Brother Chin, what are you dragging along? Oh wow, it's a barbarian. Catching a scout alive is a huge achievement. The county office even rewards silver for it. Someone added, their envy plain as day. The more they talked, the more jealous they sounded. Chow Kong, visibly irate and likely embarrassed by the admiration I was receiving, shouted at the workers, "Are you people working or not?" As he turned back and saw me with the small gray horse and the barbarian tied up on its back, his eyes practically popped out of his head. The county had just issued a notice. Reporting barbarian activity garnered 3 taels of silver, capturing one alive was worth 20, and retrieving a horse or military supplies added even more. This 1 man and 1 horse were worth at least 50 taels. Such a windfall had landed in my lap, and the thought burned like acid in Chow Kang's chest. The recent wild boar hunt I'd led had already tarnished his reputation. Villagers were increasingly looking to me for leadership, and his jealousy was growing unbearable. To make matters worse, I twisted the knife by turning his younger brother against him and his wife. The more Chow Kong thought about it, the angrier he became. He whipped around and glared at his brother, Chow Tai, like it was all his fault. To prevent more mishaps, Chow Kong had been dragging Chow Tai to work every day, practically keeping him on a leash. Living with the shame of a cuckold weighed on Chow Kong, but he convinced himself it was his brother's youthful naivety and that his wife was to blame for being shameless. Of course, all of his anger ultimately settled squarely on me. Unable to hold it in any longer, he rolled up his sleeves, stomped through the patties, and planted himself in front of my horse to block the road. Chin Dagon, you wretched curse. Stop right there. Pulling the reins to a halt, I coolly watched Chow Kong as he stormed up, already screaming insults. I crossed my arms and asked, "What now? How have I become a jinx again?" Pointing a finger directly at my nose, he bellowed, "You doomed your parents, brought famine to the village, cursed the land so we can't grow crops, and now everyone's struggling to survive. You led wild boars down the mountain to harm people, coaxed others into the mountains where Wang Ermatzi lost his life, and worst of all, you've corrupted my brother to lust after his sister-in-law. Every misfortune the Chow family has endured is your fault." His shouting grew more frenzied. "For the sake of peace in the village, I hereby strip you of your rights as a villager. Pack your things and get out of Little River Village. You're no longer one of us." I couldn't help but laugh. "So, if I'm not a villager, are you planning to give me the village chief's job?" Chow Kang's face turned ghostly white. "So you admit you've been scheming for my position. I'm reporting you to the county office." He thought of. Late at night, Chow Tai's gossip only reinforced the notion that he thought I was bent on ruining the Chow family's reputation and forcing him to step down. He was both terrified and infuriated. I impatiently snapped, "You're crazy. Get lost." I gave him a hard shove, and Chow Kong tumbled into the mud again. Furious, he roared, "I'm the village chief. Did you forget it was me who gave you work when you didn't even have food to put on the table? You ungrateful wretch." My hand instinctively went to my waist, gripping the hatchet that was already in my grasp. Sensing my lethal intent, Chow Kang's legs turned to jelly. He froze for half a second before screaming at the top of his lungs, "Murder! He's going to kill me!" and ran off in a panic. Watching his retreating figure, I understood clearly that the Chow brothers weren't going to let this go. Since I'd still need to visit the county frequently, I made a mental note to have Gang Air and the others keep a closer watch on my home. Chow Kang's position as the village chief was officially appointed by the county office. Without a proper excuse, it would be difficult to remove him. But Chow Tai? He was a different story. If he dared to act up again, I would not hesitate to deal with him ruthlessly. I let out a cold snort, turned around, and led my horse back home. The moment I left, Chow Tai rushed to help Chow Kong to his feet, gritting his teeth as he said, "Brother, we can't let this grudge go unavenged." Chow Kang's face darkened, and he snapped, "Do you think I can retaliate looking like this? We'll need a reason, a way to use the law to get rid of him." A sinister glint appeared in Chow Tai's eyes. "Not necessarily. He just captured a barbarian and must be heading to the county soon to claim his reward. I can't beat him in a fight, but his woman? That's a different matter. The moment he's gone, I'll humiliate Lin Ru, tie her to a post stark naked, and burn that pathetic straw house of his to the ground. With no evidence left and me injured, plus a few laborers as witnesses, even if he suspects us, he won't be able to pin it on us." Chow Kang's eyes lit up. "All right, it's a plan. If he wants to destroy our family, let's destroy his first." When I arrived home, Lin Ru was squatting in the yard, cooking wild vegetables, with Aunt Xiao helping her on the side. I tied my horse at the gate and greeted her with a warm Aunt Xiao. Aunt Xiao was from Xiaohe village. Back when I was a scoundrel, she secretly gave Lin Ru food to survive. Otherwise, Lin Ru wouldn't have lasted. Her own son had been conscripted and was missing in action, and her daughter had died from childbirth after being married off to a faraway town. Because of that, she treated Lin Ru like her own daughter. Lin Ru ran up to me as soon as she saw me, as if she wanted to say something but hesitated. I urged her, "If there's something on your mind, spit it out." In a soft voice, she said, "Uncle Zhang broke his leg while climbing the mountain, and Aunt Xiao needs to take care of him. Plus, their household is running out of food. Our house doesn't lack food right now. Can we send something over to repay their kindness? I won't take the rice or flour. I'd just take the wild vegetables that Wang Hu and Li Si gave us. If that's not enough, I can eat a little less myself." Her thoughtfulness warmed my heart. "Silly girl, do whatever you think is best." Taken aback, Lin Ru quickly thanked me and ran off to Aunt Xiao's side. Just as Aunt Xiao was about to give her thanks, she glanced at the gray horse tied at the gate and suddenly screamed in fright, backing away. I quickly explained that the barbarian tied to the horse was captured by me and that I was planning to take him to the county for a reward. He was already unconscious. But Aunt Chiu was focused on the horse and nervously said, "You're really going to keep this horse? Privately keeping a military horse is a crime punishable by death." I smirked. "Who said it's a military horse? I found it in the mountains. It's a wild horse." Aunt Chiu pursed her lips and said firmly, "Chiwazi, take off the bridle and saddle and hide them at my place for now. If the authorities come to investigate, they won't be able to accuse you without finding the bridle and saddle. Trust me on this." Her words weren't lost on me. Aunt Chiu was trying to protect Lin Ruru and also giving me a way out. Without exposing her intentions, I simply nodded. I handed the bridle and saddle to Aunt Chiu and led the horse to the backyard before securing it. I then tossed the unconscious barbarian onto the ox cart, hitched it up, and headed straight for the county. On the way, the barbarian pretended to remain unconscious and searched for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack. I immediately broke one of his legs on the spot, and he finally behaved himself. As soon as I reached the county gate, the guards recognized the barbarian and surrounded us, hauling both of us, me and the barbarian, straight to the county office. Thankfully, there was a public notice at the office, and Lin Feng, who worked there, was on duty, so I avoided being hassled. Lin Feng led me straight to the dungeon entrance, his face full of admiration. "Brother-in-law, you're incredible. You even managed to capture a barbarian. Once the county officer verifies it and signs off on the paperwork, I'll take you to the scribe to claim your reward, 20 taels. That's enough to live comfortably for quite a while. I only earn 3 coins a month. Your reward would take me 5 years to earn." I chuckled, returning the praise in passing. "Brother-in-law, you're now a county guard. Your skills must be top-notch. No way would you be any less capable than me." "Who am I kidding? With your skills, I wouldn't last more than 3 moves in a fight against you." Lin Feng laughed unabashedly, clearly pleased, though a bit sheepish. He gave me a hearty pat on the shoulder, saying, "You're too kind, brother-in-law." I stifled a grin, playing along to kill time. I hadn't realized Lin Feng was so easy to pacify. Right then, the creaky door to the dungeon swung open, and out came a burly man with a thick beard. Tall and powerfully built, his commanding presence was evident as his tiger-like eyes swept over us. Lin Feng hurried forward. "Officer Zhang, here's the barbarian, and this is Qin Shi from Xiaohe village." He caught the guy, credit goes to him. Officer Zhang clearly recognized me. The stories of the drunkard and gambler from the city. Yeah, he'd heard those. He stared at me, his voice as heavy as a stone. "Your name's Qin Shi?" "It is." I responded calmly, neither humble nor arrogant. Officer Zhang didn't waste his breath. He strode over, grabbed the barbarian by the collar with one hand, and turned his face left and right for a good look. "This one's definitely the barbarian." He then walked back and got in my face. "Do you know the penalty for treason in our grade Zhou?" My eyes went cold. "You think I'm not skilled enough to take down a barbarian, so now you're suspecting me of being a traitor?" Lin Feng's face went pale instantly. He could feel the disaster brewing. Officer Zhang used to be a military instructor for the Imperial Guards in the capital, and he was tough as nails. If he got angry and really flipped out, a single slap could kill a man. But Officer Zhang didn't get angry. Instead, he narrowed his eyes, an expression of growing interest on his face. Most people would have crumbled under his intimidating air, yet I didn't back down one bit. "You skilled or not? We'll find out soon enough," he finally said with a wave of his hand. "Go get Captain Li. If you can't even handle Captain Li, there's no way you caught a barbarian. And in that case, those 20 silver taels, forget about getting a single coin." He ordered a chair to be brought over, ready to test me right then and there at the dungeon entrance. I let out a cold laugh and gave him a sideways glance. "You really think I came all this way for those measly 20 taels? All I wanted was to capture a barbarian, interrogate him, and maybe get some military intel to help shorten this war and spare the common people from more suffering. But to prove myself for just 20 taels? That's laughable." Officer Zhang froze for a second, taken aback. 20 taels was a decent sum even for him. For a gambling drunk like me to turn up my nose at it. If that wasn't bluffing, what was? His surprise quickly turned to disdain. Before long, a tall, thin Captain Li strode in, carrying a heavy cudgel. Casually, he tossed a similar one to me. Officer Zhang knew exactly what he was doing. He'd trained Captain Li personally, one-on-one. Li could handle the average Junliao soldier without breaking a sweat. Officer Zhang planned to teach me a lesson, but after hearing my cocky talk, he decided to take it up a notch. He barked out the order with a serious tone. Don't hold back. Go all out. Just don't kill him. Captain Lee gripped his cudgel and approached me, weapon raised. He adopted a stance. I snorted softly. Dropping my front hand and raising my back hand slightly, I angled my cudgel downward to meet him. Officer Zhang's eyes narrowed as he saw my stance. His heart sank. It didn't look like I was faking it. The two of us circled each other briefly before Captain Lee suddenly struck, swinging diagonally toward my head. I raised my cudgel and blocked it, then used the momentum to swipe along his weapon toward his hand. Having only learned the basics, Captain Lee panicked when I swiped at him, loosening his grip with his forward hand. Unwilling to give up, he lunged with his back hand, thrusting his cudgel straight toward my face. But with his forward hand off, he lost all precision. I didn't even bother dodging, simply lifting my cudgel. Smack! A sharp crack rang out as the tip of my cudgel struck under Captain Lee's chin. His eyes rolled back, and he hit the ground, out cold. The surrounding constables stepped back in unison, their faces pale with terror. That hit had looked real painful. Officer Zhang shot to his feet, his eyes suddenly gleaming with excitement. One strike, that was all it took to put someone down. Precise, efficient, and ruthless. It was the work of someone who had truly trained. I underestimated you, he said, voice laced with satisfaction. Didn't think we'd have someone like you in these parts. This station's short a constable. You in? Lin Feng, still stunned, snapped to attention at this offer and immediately rushed over to pull me aside. Brother-in-law, accept it quickly. My dad had to deliver the county magistrate's wife's baby and fork over 50 taels just to get me in the constable ranks. Opportunities like this don't come twice. Don't screw this up. Becoming a constable meant food from the government and respect in the county. And with Officer Zhang's background as a former imperial instructor, someone even the magistrate wouldn't cross. Working under him would mean an elevated status. But I tossed the cudgel aside and cupped my hands in refusal. Thanks for the offer, but I'm not interested. Trying to tie me down with a mere constable position? I wasn't even sure Officer Zhang's post was worth my time. Officer Zhang's expression instantly darkened. Offering me a spot personally, me turning it down outright, that took guts. Lin Feng was desperate, sweating profusely as he tried to smooth things over. Officer Zhang, please don't be upset. He's just being rash. I'll talk some sense into him. He turned to me, pinching my arm fiercely and growling through clenched teeth. Have you lost your mind? How could you say no? Even if you don't care about yourself, think about my sister. If you take the position, you too can move into the county. Doesn't that beat rotting away in the village? I knew Lin Feng meant well, for me and Lin Ruru. I didn't argue back and just replied quietly. Big brother, everyone has their own path. Lin Feng clearly wanted to push further, but at that moment, another captain hurried over to Officer Zhang. Sir, wasn't the magistrate's nephew supposed to be slotted into this station? He made it clear a few days back, and he's arriving tomorrow. If we don't leave space, the magistrate might not take it well. His words were meant to be discreet, but the volume was just enough for Lin Feng and me to overhear. It was clear, as plain as day. Let's be tactful. Lin Feng's expression darkened, and he fell silent like a deflated balloon. That's nonsense. How could he have so many nephews? Zhang Dianshi stood akimbo and cursed, but in the end, after gritting his teeth, he nodded reluctantly. If you don't want to do it, then forget it. I'll sign the paperwork for you. Go to the scribe's office to collect your reward money. Seeing his straightforward nature, I smiled and made a mental note of him. After leaving the dungeon, Lin Feng sighed all the way, and even after taking me to collect the reward money, he stood there, regretfully waving. I didn't pay it much mind, climbed onto the ox cart, and headed home. Just as I reached the gate, I saw Gung Er standing on the hillside. Brother Qin, you're finally back. As Gung Er shouted, out came He Go and Deshan from the courtyard. The three of them were disheveled, with He Go's face swollen and streaked with blood. My heart sank, and I jumped off the cart immediately. What happened? Just go inside and see for yourself. Once I stepped into the yard, I saw Aunt Chiu with her hair disheveled, clutching the trembling Lin Ruru in her arms. In the corner, Chow Tai lay tied up like a dumpling with coarse rope, tossed aside. I understood right away, rage instantly surging to my head. The Chow family was really tearing off all pretense of decorum, weren't they? Suppressing his anger, Gung Er said, when we came to deliver wood, we could hear fighting and yelling from far away in your courtyard. When we got closer, we saw that brute Chow Tai trying to harm young Lady Rue. If Aunt Xiao hadn't clung to him with all her might, he'd have dragged her away. Lin Ruru, seeing me like she had grabbed hold of a lifeline, rushed into my embrace, sobbing. I held her shoulders steady. Are you hurt? She raised her right hand. Her wrist was red and rubbed raw. I'm fine, husband, but please go check on Aunt Xiao first. That scoundrel hit Aunt Xiao so many times with a wooden club. I was terrified. Turning my head, I glimpsed the mulberry wood club lying on the ground, and my fury intensified. Aunt Xiao. She shook her head stubbornly. I'm fine. The girl was just a little frightened, but her face was pale, and she could barely stand. I took out 2 taels of silver and asked Gung Er and the others to take Aunt Xiao to Day Village to see the herbal doctor. Then, I bent down, picked up that mulberry wood club, and walked up to Chow Tai. By now, Chow Tai had already been beaten black and blue, with a rag stuffed in his mouth. Seeing my return, he was stricken with terror, squirming frantically on the ground. I softly said to Lin Ruru, Ruru, go inside. You don't need to see this. The gentler my tone, the sharper it cut like a blade. Chow Tai let out a despairing scream from his throat, desperately scrambling toward the door. Warmth spread in his pants, leaving a trail of dampness. I sneered, kicked him onto the ground, raised the club with both hands, and swung it at his vitals like hitting a ball. Thwack! Chow Tai wailed so loud the rag flew out of his mouth. He convulsed on the ground in pain. Before he could catch his breath, I brought the stick down again, this time on his head, sending blood and shattered teeth flying. You dare lay a hand on my woman? Who do you think you are? Was it this hand that grabbed Ruru earlier? I drew out a hand axe and slashed down at his wrist. Chow Tai's screams turned high-pitched as he wept and pleaded, claiming he didn't do anything. I didn't care to listen, saying coldly, just one hand? You used the other one too. Without hesitation, a dull thud echoed, abruptly cutting off his begging. Eyes wandering where they shouldn't, leering at her. Huh? I stepped closer, my voice dripping with menace. Legs not behaving either, kicking in my courtyard gate. The crisp crack of breaking bones followed one after another. The screams dragged on, but eventually subsided. Half an hour later, a corpse rested beneath a large tree at the village entrance. The man's arms were gone. A noose hung around his neck, his legs broken, kneeling backward before the tree. His head bent unnaturally back, empty sockets where his eyes should have been, and his mouth gagged. When Chao Kong arrived in a frenzy with laborers, one look at the ghastly sight, and his vision blacked out. He collapsed on the spot. The crowd did everything they could, splashing water and pinching his pressure points, and finally got him conscious again. Hugging the tree, he cried blood tears. Qin Chi, this isn't over. Back home, after tidying up briefly, I went into the house and saw Lin Ru sitting at the edge of the bed, her face still pale with fear. She whispered, Husband, am I a burden to you? Always causing trouble for you. Giving her a reassuring pat on the head, I said, You're my wife. Anyone who bullies you is an insult to me. This isn't your fault. It's their lack of self-preservation. Locking eyes with hers, I calmly but firmly declared, I'll make sure everyone knows. Anyone who dares lay hands on my woman, there's only one outcome. Her eyes welled with tears, and yet she felt an intense sense of security as she pressed herself tightly against my chest. Softly, she asked, Husband, will our child grow up to be as outstanding as you? I laughed. Won't we find out soon enough? Sweeping her into my arms, I teased. They'll definitely be as good-looking as you, as tough as me, and maybe someday, they'll grow up to be a great general. Her face turned fiery red as she stammered. Don't. What if they come back suddenly? This bright daylight, huh? I leaned in close to her, whispering, What's wrong? Don't want him to become a great general? Before she could finish, I kissed her, swallowing all her words. After a long while, Lin Ruru pulled the blanket over herself, still uneasy. Husband, do you think the village chief will report us to the authorities and come back for revenge? I answered coldly, Report us? He has no witnesses, no evidence. But we do. If he dares go to the authorities, he'll be accused of covering for his brother's crimes. He can kiss that village chief position goodbye. I scoffed. If it truly goes to the county court, what little he owns is nothing to leverage against me. Killing Chow Tai wasn't an impulsive act. It was about removing an obstacle to clear the way for buying land, snatching the village chief position, and preventing any future disruptions to my schemes. That afternoon, Lin Ruru cooked porridge with meat. After we ate and rested a bit, I stepped outside to practice for 2 rounds. Just then, from down the hill, I saw 3 figures staggering toward me. It was Wang Hu, Li Si, and Zhou Nong. Each carried a bow, but were newly wounded, with Zhou Nong even limping. I had clearly instructed them to stay out of the mountains, but they didn't listen. Went bear hunting, didn't you? I asked coldly. The 3 nodded sheepishly. Wang or Mozi's death had left them bitter and desperate for revenge, so they ventured into the mountain again. They didn't find the bear, but instead ran into an injured tiger. That tiger had 4 or 5 slash marks on it, clearly from a fight with humans. Wang Hu gritted his teeth and reported. Li Si chimed in. We followed it to its lair. Brother Qin, if you take action, we can definitely bring it down. My mind immediately went to the 2 barbarian corpses. Likely, they were the ones who wounded the tiger. Tigers are valuable animals. All parts fetch a high price. I had to admit, I was tempted. It was probably eating the dead horse when these 3 bumped into it and tracked it to its lair, exposing its hiding place. All right, I'll go take a look. I nodded, then darkened my expression. Leave the bows here and return tomorrow to get them. Today, make 20 stone-headed arrows, as I taught you. If you don't have them ready, don't bother asking for your bows back. The 3 instantly deflated and could only agree. I patted their shoulders. Revenge is fine, but first, hone your skills. Charging in recklessly like this? You're just feeding yourselves to the beasts. After sending them off, I gathered my gear and ventured into the mountains. Half an hour later, I reached the tiger's lair. The drag marks outside the cave entrance were clear. The dead horse had indeed been dragged inside. Tigers typically don't stash food, and with its injuries, dragging it miles back into this cave was unusual. I approached the entrance and strained my ears, quickly picking up faint tiger cub cries. The horse had been dragged back, it seemed, not for the tiger itself, but for its young. Lighting a torch and loading a bolt into my crossbow, I cautiously entered the cave. The smell grew stronger the deeper I went. After 7 or 8 meters, I noticed a sunken den area within the cave. Inside, a snow-white tiger lay weakly, barely hanging on. The tigress, blood-soaked all over, barely managed to lift her head in response to the incoming human presence. She let out a warning growl, but it was clear she lacked any real strength. Seeing it incapacitated prompted a boldness in me. I swiftly approached to investigate. The dead horse lay nearby, while 2 half-grown cubs nibbled at its flesh, squealing as they tried to coax their mother to join them in eating. The cubs were around 3 to 4 months old, about the size of dogs, still wobbling as they walked and struggling to chew. Fixating on the 1 white and 1 yellow cub, a ruthless idea popped into my mind. If I could raise them, they'd grow into formidable beasts under my control. While others ride into battle on horses, I'd charge astride a white tiger, roaring down at the enemy, sending soldiers scattering and horses bolting. Both imposing and practical. I couldn't help but feel exhilarated just imagining it. The tigress noticed my intent gaze on her cubs and, with a sudden burst of energy, let out another anguished roar. Defying her injuries, she forced herself up, only to collapse again moments later. Her fierce maternal instinct had driven her to fight on. I lowered the crossbow slowly, crouching near the tigress, and spoke softly. Today, you've taken down 2 barbarian scouts, protecting the border for the Empire. For that, I won't take your life. But you're gravely injured. There's no saving you. Once you die, your cubs will starve to death out here too. If you entrust your cubs to me, I promise to raise them well and spare them suffering. When they grow up, I'll take them to the battlefield to avenge you by slaughtering barbarian scum. If you agree, call out once. I wasn't expecting her to understand, honestly. I was just saying it to ease my conscience. Surprisingly, the tigress let out a feeble growl and managed to lift a paw, pointing it toward the horse carcass. Her gaze never wavered from it. I understood. She was worried her cubs would go hungry and was signaling for me to take the horse meat too. But this also reminded me, once the tigers grew up, they'd only eat meat, and their appetites would be fearsome. How could I even afford to raise them? Initially, I planned to bury the tigress then take the cubs, but now doubts lingered as I calculated the costs. All right, let's negotiate further. The cost of keeping them alive is too high. I'm financially strapped and can't afford it anymore. I can only take your corpse to exchange for money and fill the gap in my situation. I'll leave your pelt behind, though, as a keepsake for your cubs. What do you think? The tigress remained silent for a moment before letting out a low growl, as if she had accepted her fate. For her cubs, she could endure anything. I let out a sigh of relief and gently patted her head. "You're a good tigress. Rest easy. I'll help you on your final journey." I carefully stroked her head, trying my best to make it as painless as possible for her. A dozen minutes later, the tigress took her final breath. Only then did I leave the den to start building a makeshift sled. The tigress weighed 400 to 500 pounds. Adding the horse meat I planned to bring back to feed her cubs, it took me over an hour to build a sturdy sled. The two little ones nibbled on the horse meat, behaving quietly, especially with their mother's presence. Worried they might attract attention on the road, I used large leaves to cover them. By the time I dragged the sled back to the village, it was already pitch dark. Lin Ruru had already prepared dinner and was standing anxiously at the courtyard gate, waiting for me. As soon as she saw me return, she darted down the hill like a butterfly, rushing to help. I smirked mischievously, deciding not to warn her. When Lin Ruru peeled back the leaves, two round tiger cub heads popped out. "Ah!" she screamed, her legs giving out from under her, tumbling straight to the ground in shock. Standing behind the sled, I bent over, laughing until my sides hurt. Meanwhile, Lin Ruru was both frustrated and amused. This man was becoming more outrageous by the day, dragging all kinds of things home. Wild boars, deer, warhorses, and now tigers. "Dear husband, you're too mischievous." Dusting herself off, she mustered the courage to take a closer peek at the cubs. The two little tigers were completely unbothered by strangers. Their bright eyes locked onto her instead, observing intently. "You're not seriously considering raising tigers at home, are you?" Two of them. The courtyard was already cramped, with the ox cart parked outside and a horse hidden indoors. Where was there space for two tigers? "For now, we'll raise them indoors. If they try destroying the place, just give them a smack." "Smack? Smack tigers." Lin Ruru covered her mouth, unwilling to imagine such a scene unfolding. "Yep." I nodded and immediately grabbed one of the cubs by the scruff of its neck. The little tiger bared its teeth and growled in defiance. Without hesitation, I gave it a light smack. It still didn't back down. A second smack later, it instantly settled down, tucking its tail between its legs and sulking in silence. Seeing that, Lin Ruru's empathy kicked in. She hastily scooped the cub up, carrying it in her arms like a baby. Grabbing the other one too, she quickly rushed inside. "Not scared now?" I teased. "Not at all. Look at them. They're so fluffy and cute." She turned back to stick her tongue out playfully before dashing into the house. Hastily, Lin Ruru built a small pen to temporarily contain the tiger cubs. Meanwhile, I tended to the tigress's remains in the courtyard. I'd been wanting a thick hide to use as a mattress cover for winter. Tiger pelt paired with deer skin, I wouldn't have to worry about the cold anymore. By midnight, I had finished my work. I dug out all my spare coins and copper pieces, hid them under the bed, and vowed to head out at first light to reclaim land deeds by selling the tigress. With the sun up high, I finally woke. Lin Ruru, early to rise as always, had already been busy, plucking vegetables, feeding the chickens, and adding straw for the cattle and horse. Passing through the room, she spotted me still sound asleep, and her cheeks flushed pink. Husband's antics lately had been increasingly audacious, leaving her daydreaming whenever she had a moment to herself, unable to suppress her thoughts. When I woke, Lin Ruru's spot in bed had been replaced by two tiger cubs. They rested their little heads on my arm, soundly asleep. The moment I lifted my arm, they both flopped over onto their backs, paws in the air, completely unfazed. Perhaps it was because of their mother's scent lingering on me that these two were so clingy with me. I woke them up and fed them more horse meat from last night, using the time to give them names. The white-furred cub was female and calm. I decided to name her Ao Shue, Proud Snow. The yellow-furred cub was male and rambunctious. I named him Jun Lin, Monarch of the Forest. After breakfast, I fashioned a special stick designed for disciplining them and handed it to Lin Ruru as I prepared to leave to reclaim the pond land deeds. The Great Zhou dynasty had been established for over 300 years, and the land had long been ravaged by natural disasters and land grabs. Roughly a third of Xiaohe village's land was controlled by Chao Kong, and the majority of the rest had been pawned off. With notes in memory, I visited over a dozen households, buying back land deeds at about 1 tael of silver per acre, collecting over a dozen deeds within hours. These fields were mostly barren and far from water sources, barely worth anything beyond symbolic value. Ancient farming techniques lacked water wheels and detailed crop management, making the land far from fruitful. As I wandered, I started strategizing potential ways to channel water or build irrigation systems. When I finally reached the riverside, I spotted a vast expanse of uncultivated fields. Overgrown with weeds towering higher than elsewhere, the soil looked incredibly fertile just by appearance. Man, this plot of land in Xiao village is the most valuable piece, spanning a full 5.5 acres, yet it happens to be owned by a stubborn old widower. Village Chief Chao Kong has tried several times to strike a deal, but he never succeeded. He's so frustrated about it that he's lost his appetite. Chao Kong has long worked out a plan in his head. As soon as the old widower passes, he can rightfully claim the land. But the old man is unbelievably tough, still full of life and energy in his 80s. Much to Chao Kang's chagrin, he just keeps hanging on. From the memories I inherited, I only know that the old man lives far to the north of the village on a small mound. His yard is filled with chrysanthemums, and he spends his days drinking tea and soaking up the sun, seeming as if he could live off the morning dew and gentle breezes alone. There's even talk in the village that people from the county occasionally deliver grain and supplies to him, suggesting he isn't just an ordinary man. That's also the reason Chao Kong hasn't dared to mess with him. I followed the path to visit. In the yard, the chrysanthemums had all withered, but the plum blossoms at the edge were blooming brilliantly. The old man, as usual, was reclined in his rocking chair humming a light tune. Just as I raised my hand to knock, a slow and leisurely voice drifted out from the courtyard. 24 years ago, I observed the night sky and saw Venus fall into the wilds of Qingzhou. This year, you must be 24 years old, no? My hand froze. Only then did I notice the door was ajar. Gently pushing it open, I stepped into the courtyard. As for my age, even the previous owner of this body wasn't sure anymore, so all I could do was give a vague response. And what might the old gentleman mean by this? The old man, dressed in simple robes, had a serene expression, as if detached from earthly concerns. You're the one called Qin Chi, who saved the villagers from the wild boars. I nodded. The old man dropped the riddles and got straight to the point. What you want? I've prepared it all for you. My time in this world is short. When I'm gone, bury me in a good feng shui spot. He raised a hand and gestured to a small wooden stool by the door. There sat a rosewood box containing the deeds to the land, along with a golden silk pouch beside it. Something about this felt increasingly strange. Just as I was about to untie the silk ribbon around the pouch, the old man gave a soft cough. That's a life-saving charm for you. Don't open it until the time is right. My heart sank. Is this old man some kind of mystic charlatan? Yet in this era, people who claim to read the heavens aren't exactly rare. The most famous of such figures would be someone like Yuan Tiangang. I felt the pouch, noting a solid, sharp object inside that seemed to resemble a small weapon. It was clearly no ordinary trinket. I decided to store it away for now. What should we carve on your tombstone, sir? The old man replied calmly. Just right. The hermit of chrysanthemums and plums. It's getting late. I must return for my midday rest. You may leave now. With that, he waved his hand, turned around, and went back into the house. A shiver ran down my spine, but I still gave his retreating figure a deep bow before leaving the yard. This old man is peculiar, no doubt about it, handing me his land deeds out of the blue and leaving me with such cryptic remarks to puzzle over. But no matter, what matters is that I've got the deeds. When the day comes that he's no longer around, I'll keep my word and see to his proper burial. I tucked the deeds away, collected a few pawn tickets from other families, and tallied them up, a total of 8. Then I hitched my bull cart and headed straight for the county town. On the way, I counted again. Including the hermit's deeds, I now had 26 pawn tickets in total, adding up to nearly 100 acres of land. If I can manage to redeem them all, I'll have earned the right to call myself a proper landlord. Generations ago, every household in Xiao village had owned at least 8 or 10 acres of land. But over time, one generation pawned a little, the next generation pawned a little more, and now we're left with nothing but destitution. Today, I can only recover what's still within reach. The rest of the land? The bulk of it had all ended up under the control of Hengxiang Pawn Shop in the county. 4 deeds with pawn tickets, you could still redeem them for the original price plus some storage fees. However, for land pawned long ago with no tickets left, those would be much trickier to reclaim. Lost in thought, I soon found myself at the doorstep of Hung Xiang Pawn Shop. In Ancon County, this was the only pawn shop in town. I had frequented it enough for the clerk at the counter to recognize me immediately, greeting me with a broad smile. "Well, if it isn't Master Qin, what have you brought us today? Is it a live pawn or a dead pawn?" The counter was absurdly high, causing anyone who approached it to naturally bow their heads. It was clearly designed to show who had the upper hand here. I pulled out a small pawn ticket and handed it over. "Take a look. This is one of your Hung Xiang tickets, right?" The clerk's smile faltered for a moment, his tone instantly turning cold. "So, you're here to redeem it." "The ticket's real, of course, but it's been a long time. Redeeming it won't be at the original rate." For land deeds, pawn tickets rarely specified a fixed deadline. The interest always seemed modest at first, until it compounded into something nearly impossible for poor folk to repay. Suppressing my anger, I asked, "This ticket is for 1 acre and 7/10 of land, pawned for 1 tael and 7 maces. How much to redeem it today?" The clerk fidgeted with his abacus, its clattering sound filling the air, before he turned back with his phony smile. 3 taels, 6 maces, and 8 candarines. Redeeming it now, are we?" My face darkened. "The price has doubled in just over 2 years." The clerk shrugged. "Compound interest, you know." I clenched the coin pouch in my hand, cursing silently. But I still slapped a stack of pawn tickets onto the counter with a loud thud. "Fine. I'm redeeming all these. Calculate the total for me." The clerk's face twisted slightly, but he quickly forced a smile back onto it. "Master Qin, let me just tally this up." "Hold on a second, bro. Let me show you this," I said. He took the pawn shop ticket from me, and the next moment, his face twisted with anger. "Rip, rip, rip." He tore it into shreds right then and there. My anger flared so much that my vision turned red. "You tore up my pawn ticket? Is this how Hung Xiang does business?" I bellowed. The clerk took a step back, raised his hands, and shouted, "What pawn ticket? I didn't see anything. He's framing me. Troublemaker. Someone get in here. Throw him out." Suddenly, 4 or 5 burly men burst out from a side door, holding long sticks, and surrounded me tightly. I stepped back half a pace, my cold gaze fixed on the clerk as I spoke in a low tone. "I'm giving you one last chance. Redeem the pawn properly. Let's not make this ugly." The clerk sneered, looking at me like I was an idiot. "A lowlife like you giving orders? Do you even know who our boss is?" "Enough talk. Beat him." The shadows of sticks came down in an instant, but my axe, never leaving my side, moved even faster. I dodged the first 2 strikes and swung sharply. My axe disabled one man's arm right away, and I swiftly snatched a stick from him. In just a few strikes, I knocked the rest flying, leaving them rolling on the ground, groaning in pain as they were thrown out toward the street. The commotion drew a crowd from around the street. Standing on the steps, holding a stick, I pointed towards the counter and called out loudly, "Everyone, take a good look. I came here with my pawn ticket to redeem my land." They violated the agreement, tore up my ticket, and then sent thugs to attack me. This crooked pawn shop traps people, steals their money, and ruins their lives. They're worse than bloodsuckers. Who here doesn't want to live honestly, to work hard and rise above their struggles? Yet look at what's happening now. When you're in a pinch and pawn your belongings here, it's like handing over a lifetime of blood, sweat, and tears to these heartless scoundrels. Can anyone stand for this? Hung Xiang may have been just another small pawn shop in Ancon County, backed at most by some powerful local figure, but the fire of anger wasn't hard to stoke. As long as everyone rioted together, looted or destroyed the place, it would become a crowd's deed, and the authorities wouldn't be able to trace it back to me. "I can't stand it," someone shouted. "They sold my family heirloom jade pendant without my permission, even before the deadline." "They tricked me too," another cried. "My mother's dowry was swindled away by them." "Me too," others echoed. The crowd surged forward. With this being the only pawn shop in the entire county, that slimy clerk had clearly cheated countless people, leaving their grievances piling up. "All right then, today, let's get justice ourselves." I shouted, "Take up whatever you can and follow me. Smash Hingxiang to pieces and take back what's yours." I leapt onto the counter and kicked open the wooden railing with one strong stomp. The clerk turned pale, bolting for the back as the crowd roared behind him. I darted inside, grabbed the clerk by the collar, and demanded to know where the land deeds were kept. He spat out the answer, trembling. I didn't waste time. A swift twist of my hands, and he was silenced, forever. The thugs didn't recognize me, making the dead clerk the only one to have identified me. Once he was gone, I was safe. Outside, people screamed. The bravest were already pounding the fallen thugs mercilessly. Knowing that words alone wouldn't keep them charged, I grabbed a handful of silver pieces and flung them outside. The metallic clinks of silver and copper hitting the ground drove the mob into a frenzy, squeezing to get inside. I ignored the madness, quickly finding the land deeds for Shaha village, stuffed them into my coat, and headed for the backyard. The shopkeeper, hearing the chaos, rushed over, only to bump into me as I was leaving. While I slipped away unnoticed, he barely made it to the front hall before being trampled alive by the rioting crowd. Scaling the wall and disappearing into a nearby alley, I smeared some dirt on my face, messed up my hair, and hid the deeds in my ox cart before casually circling back to observe. Before long, county officers arrived. Li and Dong, two captains I recognized, had come too, but by then, the crowd had already dispersed. All they found was a plundered, wrecked pawn shop. As the officials dragged bodies out of the shop, they questioned anyone nearby, but received only clueless shrugs and shaking heads. Hengxiang's staff? All dead, no one left breathing to speak. Resigned, the captain sealed the shop and moved on to investigate later. Relieved, I climbed onto my ox cart and headed straight for the county pharmacy. The tiger pelt was for my own use, while its bones and tendons were highly valuable. Seeing the goods, the pharmacist's eyes lit up with greed. Still, a small-town pharmacy had limits. The store bought one tiger paw at a hefty price, but suggested I head to Xing'an City to sell the rest. Xing'an City was 50 miles away, straddling the borders of Qingzhou, and was busy preparing for their campaign against Jinliao. The journey wasn't safe. Highwaymen lurked, and Jinliao scouts were even deadlier. For security, hiring a guard agency was my best bet. With the pharmacist's referral and the guard bureau's address in hand, I made my way to Shunfeng Security Agency. The outfit was modest yet reputable, frequently traveling to Xing'an City and maintaining good relations along the way. Rarely did trouble come their way. Following the main avenue to the northern end of the county, I soon saw an imposing compound. Horses and carts stood ready outside as the sounds of martial practice rang from inside. A large flag bearing Shunfeng fluttered on the high walls. A servant by the gate spotted me, his eyes lighting up as he approached eagerly. "Good sir, are you here to hire our services?" he asked with enthusiasm. I nodded. "Transporting silver, goods, or a passenger?" "Goods. I'll also need to request a small favor from the head guard." "All right, let me see the cargo first." "Well, sir, is that a tiger?" he exclaimed, blinking in astonishment as he stepped closer, his jaw nearly dropping to the ground. "Yes, it's a tiger. Couldn't sell it in the county, so now I'll try my luck in Xing'an City. I'm tied up with other things, so I need to trouble the escort agency for a delivery." "This tiger, did you kill it?" I merely nodded. "A young man slays a tiger. Remarkable," the servant muttered, cupping his hands in acknowledgement. "Please, come in. Let me fetch the boss and the head guard." With the current turmoil in the north, business was increasingly tough. Getting a job as far as Xing'an was already considered good fortune, let alone transporting a whole tiger, a rare and valuable commodity. Nobody would dare to take this lightly. Upon entering the escort agency, I saw about a dozen guards in training. Their leader was a tall woman clad in black, deftly wielding a spear with sharp and powerful strikes. Her cold and hardened demeanor demanded attention, a commanding presence. Hopping off the ox cart, I couldn't help but glance at her for a moment longer. Noticing this, her face darkened. She thrust the spear forward decisively, its tip stopping right in front of my nose. The chilling gust from the blade brushed past, but I simply smiled faintly, not even blinking. "Not easily intimidated, are you?" she scoffed coldly. It was only then that her eyes drifted toward the ox cart, realizing I was a guest. Her expression stiffened awkwardly for a moment before she feigned composure. "Luer, what's going on here?" "Young mistress, this guest wishes to entrust a transport to Xing'an City." I was just about to inform the head escort and the boss. "What's being transported?" "A tiger," Luer hurried to add. "What's more, this young man is the hero who slew it himself." The woman was visibly skeptical. Swiftly, she strode over, planted her spear into the ground, and glared intently at the tiger's corpse inside the cart. "You killed it? Where? How?" Qin Chi's face turned frosty. "I'm here for business. not an interrogation. You don't need to know that. Turning on his heel, Qin Shi followed Luer toward the main hall. But the woman quickly blocked his path, her voice even more forceful. Hold it. Who says I don't need to know? What if you stole this tiger? Should we, Shunfeng Escort Agency, help you transport stolen goods? Qin Shi crossed his arms silently, clearly aggravated. Luer quickly pulled the woman aside to speak to her in hushed tones, but she would not back down. That's an adult tiger. Even our entire escort team would avoid it, yet he claims to have taken it down alone. Xin'er, enough, sounded a calm but firm voice. From inside the main hall emerged a burly, middle-aged man. With steady steps and rugged features, his arms showed a slight bow from years of martial training, the signs of a seasoned guard. Behind him walked a taller, slender man in a gray robe and square hat, his goatee speckled with white. Razor-sharp eyes glinted like a hawk's. Head guard manager Luer, relieved to see reinforcements, hurried over to explain the situation. I'm Zhao Mingyi, the chief guard of Shunfeng Escort Agency. This is the manager, Yin Zheng. Zhao Mingyi acknowledged with a cupped hand salute. May I ask for your name? Qin Shi introduced himself and got straight to the point. He wanted the agency to sell the tiger for him. Upon hearing the term sell tiger, a telling light flickered briefly in the eyes of Zhao Mingyi and Yin Zheng. That's manageable, Zhao nodded. We have close ties with the apothecaries in the city. We can help you get a better price, but of course, we'd take an extra commission for the service. Fine, Qin Shi agreed without hesitation. Then, let manager Yin appraise it first, and we'll discuss the rest afterward. Just as Zhao Mingyi finished speaking, Zhao Xian stepped forward. Father, Zhao Mingyi raised his hand to stop her. My daughter has caused offense earlier. I hope you won't take it to heart. He understood his daughter's temperament too well. Whenever someone who seemed skilled crossed her path, she'd immediately be itching to challenge them outright. At 17 or 18 years old, Zhao Xian had honed her skills with relentless discipline. Her mastery of the soft whip was particularly fierce, earning her a formidable reputation across the escort agency. In all of Ancon County, only two people could definitively best her: her father, Zhao Mingyi, and the local constable, Zhang Linghua. Yet stubborn as ever, she wouldn't submit even to them. Zhao Mingyi wasn't keen to let her display such antics in front of a guest. At that exact moment, Qin Shi smiled ever so slightly and glanced briefly at Zhao Xian before turning toward Yin Zheng. It wasn't subtle, it almost felt intentional, a deliberate provocation. Zhao Xian's temper flared instantly. Her hand darted to her waist, retrieving a brown soft whip. Before her father could intervene, she raised it high and swung it fiercely. The crack of the air rippled sharply. Before Zhao Mingyi could cry out a warning, Qin Shi had already moved. With a flick of his wrist, a small axe appeared in his hand. He spun backward, launching it cleanly behind him. The axe handle twirled midair, wrapping tightly around the whip and sapping its energy in one swift move. Both the axe and the whip clattered to the ground a good few yards away. Zhao Xian froze in shock. Zhao Mingyi did the same. A master. The word flashed in both their minds. One kept silent to suppress admiration, while the other only grew more excited. Father, Zhao Xian shouted abruptly, turning to Zhao Mingyi with a sparkle in her eyes. Remember when you said you'd arrange for a martial competition to decide my husband? According to Qingzhou law, women past 14 who aren't matched by an official mediator are subject to an annual marriage tax. At 18 years old, Zhao Xian's delayed matches had now piled up into nearly 100 taels of silver in fines. Zhao Mingyi wasn't unwilling to let her marry. It's just that every candidate he found was met with instant rejection by his picky and headstrong daughter. He couldn't outdebate his wife again. Every time his daughter refused a match, his wife would delay the marriage arrangements, while continuing to send betrothal gifts year after year. Zhao Mingyi felt heartache just looking at it all. Out of options, he simply arranged a martial arts competition for marriage, wanting to find a young, skilled master from a prosperous family who could keep his daughter in check, so he could have peace of mind. However, no one in Ancon County could best Zhao Xian in combat. Instead, she used the opportunity to corner him even further. Lowering his voice, Zhao Mingyi tried to reason with her. Xin'er, this man might be skilled, but he looks like a farmhand straight out of the countryside. If you marry him, you'll suffer a hard life. Zhao Xian proudly raised her head. I'm not afraid of hardship. Besides, father wouldn't let me starve. Why does it matter if he's from the countryside? In chaotic times, talent rises to the top. Who knows? He might even become a general someday. Injung couldn't help chuckling as he turned to Qin with a question. Dear guest, may I ask if you are already married? Qin replied calmly. I am. I already have a wife back home. Hearing this, Zhao Mingyi grew even more anxious. You heard him, didn't you? That would make you a concubine at best. As the head of Shunfeng Escort Agency and a prominent man in Ankang County, Zhao Mingyi had connections in both the official and underworld realms. Even the county magistrate was a regular guest at his household. If his daughter were to end up with some poor rural boy and as a concubine at that, where could he possibly show his face? But Zhao Xian was unfazed and confidently retorted. So what if I'm a concubine? It's not like I'm vying for the throne. There's no difference between a wife and a concubine. Besides, there's no guarantee who will bear the first son in the future. Her words made even Qin chuckle, while Zhao Mingyi's face turned a dark, angry shade. Zhao Xian planted her hands on her hips. I'll go get our family heirloom bow. Only someone who can draw it will qualify to challenge me. Hey, you better not disappoint me. Qin stared at her seriously for a moment before speaking. Why should I marry you? Zhao Xian froze for a moment, caught off guard. Are you saying I'm not beautiful? Qin gave her a once-over and replied. Beautiful. But beauty is of little practical use. You must have value. Zhao Xian immediately shot back. Of course I'm valuable. I'm skilled in both academics and martial arts. If you marry me, the entire Shunfeng Escort Agency comes as my dowry. As she spoke, she casually patted Zhao Mingyi on the shoulder, making his face flush with anger. Qin pondered briefly and said, Go ahead. Zhao Xian cheered and dashed off. What Qin didn't say out loud was, this girl could truly be useful to him. If he became too busy in the future to manage affairs at home, having Zhao Xian around would ensure he could avoid trouble. Moreover, with the escort agency's extensive travel and connections, its influence would undoubtedly be of great use to him someday. Zhao Mingyi's view of Qin took a rapid nosedive. The guest he had previously treated with respect was now just some rascal trying to steal his daughter. No father could maintain a pleasant demeanor in such a situation. Fortunately, Injung quickly stepped in to change the subject after finishing his assessment of the tiger's corpse. Dear guest, this tiger carcass is missing its pelt and one paw. May I ask why? I kept the pelt for a mattress, and I already sold the paw to a local pharmacy. Qin answered matter-of-factly. Injung's mouth twitched, silently cursing the man's extravagance. That leaves the tiger's bones, heart, and tendons intact. If we use the escort agency's network to transport and sell them in Xing'an City, they'd fetch at least 3,000 taels of silver. We'd charge a 10% commission for transport and sales. What do you think? 10%? Qin raised an eyebrow. 10% of 3,000 taels meant 300 taels, an outrageous price. Zhao Mingyi also turned to look. Such a task would normally cost 50 taels at most. Yet Injung had the audacity to quote 300. Injung remained composed. First off, without our help, this tiger would sell for no more than 2,000 taels. At 10%, you're still coming out ahead. Second, if you manage to draw that heirloom bow later, we'll reduce the fee to 100 taels. Qin instantly understood. If he couldn't draw the bow, it would suggest suspicion about the tiger's origin, and the extra 200 taels would cover their risk costs. No need, Qin said, meeting his gaze unflinchingly. If I draw the bow and defeat your young lady, you'll still collect 300 taels. Consider the additional 200 as my bride price. A 200-tael bride price. Zhao Mingyi pressed his lips together. In the current Dezhou dynasty, with its sparse population, bride prices were long abandoned, and daughters were essentially given away for free. But this young man was skilled, wealthy, and willing to spend. Zhao Mingyi's evaluation of him couldn't help but improve, but it was still far from enough to win over his daughter. The heirloom bow is here. Zhao Xian came bounding out of the main hall, her excitement evident. The escort guards and porters had already formed a circle, their eyes all fixed on the bow case in her hands. Opening the case, she revealed a fully black lacquered bow. This bow is called Sun Ying, Shadow Seeker. Zhao Mingyi introduced coldly, clearly hoping to scare him off. An ancestral heirloom crafted from wild ox horn, with a draw weight of 3 stones. The power of a 3-stone bow is equivalent to 180 pounds. Being able to draw such a bow is enough qualification to earn oneself a position at the royal court. A 3-stone horn bow, truly a treasure, Qin remarked as he took the bow in his hands. Resting 3 fingers on the bowstring, he slowly began to exert force. A deep creak came from the bowstring, growing tighter inch by inch until it reached 2/3 of its full draw. The onlookers, including the Zhao father and daughter, held their breath, their eyes glued to the taut string. This type of bow, known as a strength bow, was designed for training physical power rather than combat use. Its purpose was not to fire repeatedly, and being able to draw it didn't necessarily mean one could endure prolonged usage. Gritting his teeth, Qin's shoulder and back muscles rippled, veins bulging under his skin. Yet the bowstring stopped there, refusing to budge further. He pressed on, his fingers beginning to tremble, but ultimately, he fell just a bit short. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd of bodyguards. When it comes to drawing such a bow, it's all about doing it in one solid effort. If you don't pull it all at once, there's no hope of completing it afterwards. Easy for you to say. If you think you're so great, why don't you give it a try? He's already at 2 stones, and you probably can't even manage 1. Hey, I'm not the one trying to impress and win the young lady's hand in marriage, am I? Huh. Zhao Mingyi, the father, let out a sigh of relief, a faint smile creeping across his face. Zhao Xian, on the other hand, stared in disbelief, her wide eyes fixated on Qin. How could someone who appeared so strong falter at the last critical stretch? My young friend, there's no need to feel bad about it. Back when I was in my prime, I could barely manage to draw it open myself. Huh? If I were to try now with these old bones. Forget about it, huh? Zhao Mingyi chuckled heartily, clearly pleased his daughter's suitors were facing setbacks. Qin relaxed his grip and let go, showing no signs of frustration. Just now, he had relied purely on brute strength, only attempting to test the limits of his physical power. For this type of rigid bow, force alone was insufficient. It also required technique. Just a little more. Can't you try again? Zhao Xian's dissatisfaction was written all over her face as she stepped forward to grab Qin's arm, her brow knit in earnest pleading. Even Yin Zheng, the advisor, stepped in, saying, "This bow really takes a toll. Perhaps our esteemed guest would like to rest a moment first?" Zhao Mingyi's smile faded, his irritation evident as he silently cursed them both for siding against him. "No need," Qin replied calmly, his breath measured. Lowering himself slightly, he clasped the bow with both hands and suddenly unleashed a surge of strength. His entire presence suddenly felt overwhelming, and the atmosphere became tense. With a commanding creak, the bow was drawn into a full crescent moon shape before everyone's eyes. Zhao Mingyi's grin froze as he stared at Qin, whose determined ferocity reminded him of his own younger self, back in a time when he dreamed of becoming a renowned general. Those dreams had been dashed long ago after a reckless battle left him with an arrow through the knee, rendering his aspirations permanently unattainable. "This is a fine bow," Qin said, exhaling deeply and easing the bowstring back. He turned and asked Zhao Mingyi, "So, Master Zhao, what's the plan from here?" Speechless for a moment, Zhao Mingyi had not yet gathered his thoughts when Zhao Xian, elated, jumped in. On the day of the first snowfall, Xing'an City will host a competition, a martial arts tournament for my hand in marriage. You have to attend. Tucking the bow back into its case, she carried it under her arm like a trophy, lifting her chin triumphantly as she strode back into the main hall. Yin Zheng chuckled, clapping Qin on the shoulder before leading him to finalize the transport contract. The goods they would be safeguarding on this delivery were highly valuable, prompting the security agency to allocate 12 skilled bodyguards, 3 horse carts, and even the personal oversight of Zhao Mingyi himself, with Yin Zheng tasked with negotiating the terms and pricing. Zhao Xian had wanted to join as well, but was firmly ordered to stay behind and mind the household while they were away. With both the chief and the manager departing, this journey saw the near mobilization of the entire agency. Qin placed a deposit of 50 taels and left his address, departing the agency soon after. The remaining cost would be delivered to his residence once the caravan's mission was completed. As Qin exited the premises, Zhao Xian insisted on seeing him off some distance. Along the way, they encountered Lin Feng, whose face was marked with worry. The latest robbery at the local pawnshop had become the talk of the town, and the county government had dispatched every available constable to investigate the case. Sitting atop the ox cart, Qin teased with a grin, "Brother-in-law, still busy, huh?" With a bitter smile, Lin Feng climbed aboard. No idea which scoundrel rounded up men to rob the pawn shop, but the mess they've made is enormous. It's impossible to clean it all up now. Feigning surprise, Qin asked, "Something like that happened? With all these officers patrolling the streets, it sounds like whoever's behind it isn't someone to mess with, huh?" With a heavy sigh, Lin Feng replied, "It's the county magistrate's nephew. The boy's been bawling in his uncle's office for an hour straight. There's no way this case ends without finding out the culprit." Feigning casual interest, Qin inquired, "How many nephews does the magistrate have?" "5 or 6, I think," Lin Feng guessed. Qin felt a twinge of concern. Until the situation cooled off, he wouldn't be able to use the land deeds in his possession. Only after spring arrived and the dust of this commotion settled would it be safe to act. To reveal anything now would invite unnecessary trouble. He pressed further, "How's the investigation coming along?" Lin Feng shook his head. "Not a single clue so far. I suspect half the county must have been involved in this heist. As for the ringleader, they covered their tracks so well that the pawn shop looks untouched. Trying to trace it back is nearly impossible. Even the accounting books are missing. At this point, the case feels like a dead end." For Qin, who had taken the land deeds and left behind no traces, this was good news. It was a piece of paper that couldn't be tracked if destroyed, thrown away, or burned, naturally making it almost impossible to investigate. After hearing this, he actually felt much more at ease. There was no way the ledger could be found, as he had already taken it long ago and stashed it, now pressing beneath Lin Feng's seat. Qin smiled and flattered him. "Brother-in-law, you've really worked hard. Next time you come to my place, I'll prepare some wild game from the mountains for you to enjoy." Lin Feng scratched his head, grinning. "Still got that deer blood wine? Last time, I couldn't quite get the taste of it." Qin patted his chest in assurance. "Of course, we've got plenty. Come over any time and help yourself to as much as you want." After exchanging a few pleasantries, the two parted ways. When Qin returned home, the first thing he did was hide the land deed. Then, he immediately called for Gung Er and the others to kick off something big, building a brick kiln. He had already scoped out the perfect spot, a flat piece of land just outside the village. First, they dug trenches to mark the boundaries. Since they didn't have pre-made bricks, the first kiln base had to be a massive pit. The materials for brick making were sourced from clay dug up in the riverbed, mixed with coarse salt and wood ash. The process required drying the clay, sifting it, adding water, molding, and then firing it for several days. It would take at least half a month to produce bricks. At most, they could bake 2 batches before winter set in. Building an entire house from bricks was out of the question, so Qin decided to fire just enough bricks to construct a heated brick bed. The rest of the walls would be made with wooden frames stuffed with yellow mud, just enough to get through the winter. The very next morning, Qin gathered every able-bodied person in the village, regardless of gender, and offered a wage of 20 won per day to begin digging. Meanwhile, Chao Kong woke up to find not a single farmhand showing up for work. His face turned dark as soot. When he grabbed the steward and demanded answers, he was told that everyone had been hired by Qin. "Good, just great. Qin Dagon, so you're trying to pick a fight with me. I want to see how long you can hold out and how many temp workers you can afford to pay." With only 2 servants left, Chao Kong stormed over to the work site. There were about 50 or 60 workers in the village. Paying them each day meant spending over a tael of silver daily. The more Chao Kong thought about it, the more he was convinced that Qin was deliberately trying to provoke him. With just the money from selling a few wild boars, he dared to go toe-to-toe with the village head over wealth. When Chao Kong arrived and saw the pit already dug and people hauling wet clay up from the river, he let out a mocking laugh. This kid really thinks he can bake bricks on his own. Earthen bricks at most sold for 1 or 2 won apiece. Wealthy families wouldn't even bother with them, and poor families couldn't afford them. Judging by the size of the kiln, at best, they could bake 5,000 bricks in one go, 20,000 in a month. Even if they sold every single brick, it would only amount to about 20 or 30 taels of silver. But with all the villagers hired to work, the wages alone would cancel out any earnings. If anything went wrong, Qin would have to pay out of his own pocket. What's worse, no one from the village would buy them, and the county might not take them either. To sell them, he'd have to haul the lot all the way to Shingen City just to try his luck. The more Chao Kong crunched the numbers, the more disdainful he felt. What an idiot. One of his servants whispered, "Master, should we just let him do as he pleases?" Stroking his short beard, Chao Kong laughed. Let him waste his energy. My land's already been torn up by the wild boars anyway. I don't need that much labor right now. Chao Kong was convinced that Qin Shi couldn't last long. Once the money ran out, the villagers would have no choice but to return to him. A few days later, the kiln was complete, and the first round of bricks was placed inside for firing. The laborers who built the kiln then went to the mountains to chop wood. The best logs were reserved for Qin Shi's house, while the lower quality ones were used as firewood for the kiln. Every day, Chao Kong showed up to supervise. His servants carried a reclining chair and some tea for him, and he would sit at a distance, watching for hours, thoroughly enjoying the sight of Qin Shi burning through his silver. The more he watched, the better he felt. What are they doing over there? Chao Kong asked, pointing at Gung Er and the others. They're picking out good logs to build Qin Dagon's house, replied one of his servants. The yard's been expanded several times over these past days. They've even put up awnings and supports. They've been busy as bees. Putting up awnings? Chao Kang's heart skipped a beat. He immediately stood up from his chair, deciding to see for himself. Qin Shi, who was busy directing workers near the kiln, spotted Chao Kong leaving but didn't pay much attention. Soon enough, Chao Kong and his men had reached Qin Shi's front yard. As he walked up the slope, he was stunned by what he saw. The muddy pathway was now covered in gravel. There was a crude flower bed surrounding the large tree. The fences in the backyard had all been replaced. A new side gate had been added to the yard, allowing ox carts to be parked inside. The awning turned out to be a shelter for the ox cart. Next to it was a large chicken coop, where at least a dozen chicks busily pecked at their feet. What's that other awning at the back? Chao Kang's eyes narrowed as he hugged the wall and crept around for a closer look. From inside the structure came faint rustling sounds. The wooden boards used for the awning were closely sealed, and the size of the structure was astonishing. Standing outside, he couldn't see a thing, but the mystery was eating away at him. One of his servants whispered into his ear, suggesting, "Master, why not climb a tree?" Throwing dignity aside, Chao Kong rushed to a nearby tree. With the help of his servant, he scrambled halfway up. Look, there's a grayish-white shadow swaying inside the shed. It's a horse. Chao Kong shuddered in fear right then and there. It was unmistakably the war horse that the foreigner had brought back that day. His foot slipped, and with a loud thud, he fell from the tree, rolling painfully a considerable distance while letting out a distressed scream. In the courtyard, Lin Ruru was about to feed fodder when she heard the commotion. She immediately shouted, "Who's out there?" Chao Kong, gasping in pain, clutched his thigh and urged his servants, "Hurry, help me up. Let's get out of here." The two servants, clearly flustered, quickly hoisted him up, and the three of them fled into the woods behind the mountain. Chao Kong gritted his teeth in pain the entire way, yet the more he thought about it, the more excited he became. A cold smile crept onto his face. "Qin Daijing, I finally got dirt on you. Hiding a warhorse? That's a crime punishable by death. Tomorrow morning, I'll report you to the local authorities. And on the day you're executed, I'll be standing right in the front row to watch your head fall to the ground." At this moment, Qin Shi was utterly unaware of the catastrophe heading his way. He was just watching bundle after bundle of firewood being carried into the brick kiln, a feeling of satisfaction welling up in his heart. As he thought about taking a short break to sip some tea, he caught sight of a group of riders entering the village. It was a caravan from the Shunfeng escort agency. Zhao Xian sat astride a tall and sturdy horse, while Yin Zheng lounged comfortably in a sedan chair. Their escort flag fluttered dramatically in the wind, exuding an undeniable air of authority. Qin Shi quickly threw on his outer garment and jogged over to greet them. From afar, Zhao Xian caught sight of him, her cheeks flushing as she instinctively called out, "Husband, I'm here." Her father had been away these past few days, leaving Zhao Xian to look after the escort agency on her own. She found it terribly dull, and ever since she had witnessed Qin Shi's impressive skills, his sharp yet handsome face and the image of him drawing his mighty bow had been etched into her mind. It had only been a few days apart, yet she found herself longing to see him again. The moment she spotted him, those words just slipped out of her mouth. This girl, Yin Zheng, hearing this from inside the sedan chair, felt his head throbbing. He pressed his palm to his forehead in exasperation. Qin Shi could only respond with an awkward laugh and a wave of his hand. "Miss Zhao, please, don't call me that. If my wife hears it, I'll have a lot of explaining to do." "You're married?" Zhao Xian rode her horse closer, her face slightly red, but her gaze unwavering. That's all right. Take me to meet her, and I'll help you explain. Terrified she'd stir up more trouble, Injung quickly stepped out of the sedan chair, clasped his hands respectfully, and interrupted. Sir, the task you entrusted to the Shunfeng escort agency has been completed. An escort stepped forward, holding a small box. Injung carefully reported the accounts. The tiger carcass sold for 3,200 taels of silver. Our commission is 320 taels, and with 50 taels already prepaid, that leaves 2,930 taels. Please inspect and confirm. Qin Shi arched an eyebrow. This escort agency was meticulous and managed to sell the tiger for an excellent price. He accepted the box, which held neatly bundled silver notes alongside some loose silver coins. Before he could thank them, Zhao Xian dismounted her horse and, smiling, intercepted him. Earned yourself some silver and planning to take off just like that? Aren't you going to invite us in for some tea? Qin Shi nodded. Of course, please do come in. He led the group back to his home. Although the courtyard wasn't fully complete, the gravel paths had already been laid, and the surrounding trees provided a pleasant atmosphere that counteracted any sense of austerity. Qin Shi pushed open the door and called out loudly, Ru, prepare tea. We have guests. Lin Ruru was tidying up in the courtyard. When she turned and saw the long line of people approaching from the slope below, panic seized her. The courtyard was still a mess, and this was the first time Qin Shi had formally brought guests home. As the lady of the house, she found herself momentarily at a loss. She hastened to bring out a couple of benches and went inside to prepare tea, before quietly returning to stand by Qin Shi's side. As soon as Zhao Xian and Injung entered, Lin Ruru, flustered, gave an awkward bow, which made Zhao Xian chuckle. Qin Shi quickly explained, This is Miss Zhao Xian, the eldest daughter of the Shunfeng escort agency, and this is Manager Yin. I tasked them with selling a tiger for me, and they've come today to deliver the payment. I invited them in for tea. When Lin Ruru heard of the Shunfeng escort agency's reputation, her heart rose to her throat. She had long heard of their renown and knew of Zhao Xian's reputation as a heroine among women. Hurriedly, she bowed again. Miss Zhao, Manager Yin, it's an honor to meet you. But Zhao Xian strode forward and grabbed her hands, pulling her aside with a bright smile. You don't need to be so formal, sister. I simply wanted to meet the kind of woman who could capture Brother Qin's thoughts so completely. And now that I've met you, I see you're truly gentle and lovely. Even I find myself drawn to you. Lin Ruru's face turned instantly red. She had no idea what Zhao Xian meant by capturing Qin's thoughts, but she found herself being gently pulled aside, throwing an imploring look toward Qin Shi for help. Meanwhile, Qin Shi smirked mischievously and turned his attention to Injung. Manager Yin, please have some tea. Injung glanced around the courtyard. The old thatched cottage still stood, while the frame of a new house had been erected beside it and the foundation laid. Building a new house, Brother Qin? Winter's just around the corner. You think you'll have it done in time? Qin Shi took a sip of tea, his tone relaxed. It'll be ready before the first snowfall. Otherwise, a winter in these mountains can truly freeze a person to death. Injung burst into hearty laughter. No need for that. The Shunfeng escort agency has plenty of spare rooms. You and your family could stay with us. We provide ample charcoal for the fires, and I guarantee your wife would be most comfortable. But Qin Shi shook his head, saying, No need. I replied with a calm smile. I'm planning to build a heated Kong bed stove. It'll be even warmer than charcoal. Injung was about to inquire further when suddenly a surprised exclamation came from the backyard. Lin Ruro's soft voice echoed through the air. Really? Did my husband really agree? The two of us instinctively turned to look. We saw Zhao Xian, leaning in close and whispering to Lin Ruro. In just a moment, the two seemed to have become as close as sisters. Noticing that Qin Shi and I were staring, Zhao Xian quickly took hold of Lin Ruro and dragged her toward the backyard, clearly intent on keeping their conversation private. However, once they arrived, Zhao Xian's eyes landed on the gray horse in the yard. With great enthusiasm, she insisted that Lin Ruro learn to ride with her, much to Ruro's dismay. She nervously begged for mercy, trying to decline. Back in the front yard, after chatting for some time, Injung finally managed to coax a reluctant Zhao Xian to leave. When Lin Ruro returned, she appeared a bit unsteady on her feet, her cheeks burning red with embarrassment. As I cleared away the teacups, I couldn't help but tease her with a chuckle. So, she told you everything, huh? Leaning into my arms, Lin Ruro softly whispered, "The woman you're planning to marry is actually Miss Zhao. She's even 2 years older than me, but will have to call me elder sister. It's, well, rather awkward. I'm Zhao Mingyi, head of the Shunfeng escort agency, and this is our manager, Yin Zheng." Zhao Mingyi greeted me with a courteous bow. How should we address our esteemed guest? I introduced myself plainly and explained my purpose directly. I wish to commission the agency to sell this tiger. The moment they heard "sell the tiger," a brief glint of interest sparkled in both Zhao Mingyi and Yin Zheng's eyes. That's easy enough. We have connections with medicine merchants in town, Zhao Mingyi said smoothly. We can even help fetch a higher price for it, though we'll charge a small commission for handling the sale. That's fine, I responded with a brief nod. Well, let's start by having manager Yin give you an estimate. We can go into the details after that. Zhao Mingyi had barely finished speaking when Zhao Xian came running over from behind. Father. Before she could say more, Zhao Mingyi swiftly raised a hand to stop her. My apologies for earlier. I hope you'll forgive her discourtesy, he said, speaking to me directly. He was well aware of his daughter's fiery temperament. Anytime she recognized someone as a skilled fighter, she'd eagerly make a challenge on the spot. Zhao Xian was about 17 or 18, and her martial arts were sharp and fierce, making her a terror with her soft whip. She'd beaten nearly everyone at the entire escort agency. Only 2 people in Ancon County could claim a surefire victory against her: her father, Zhao Mingyi, and Zhang Lingwei, an officer of the law. But even they couldn't fully restrain her independent spirit. Zhao Mingyi didn't want her causing trouble or embarrassment in front of an important guest like me. And yet, catching a glimpse of her energy, I couldn't resist the urge to provoke just a little. Curling the corner of my lips upward in a half-smile, I cast a quick glance at Zhao Xian before turning and walking toward Yin Zheng, intentionally leaving her out of the conversation. That slight did not go unnoticed, and, unsurprisingly, Zhao Xian's temper flared instantly. In a swift motion, she reached for her waist, producing her signature brown whip. Before Zhao Mingyi could stop her, she lashed out with a sharp crack. The whip sliced through the air with a fierce whistle, and just as it reached me, I nonchalantly drew my small axe. With a flick of my wrist, the axe spun backward through the air, wrapping the axe handle around the whip with precise timing. With a loud snap, the force of her strike abruptly dissipated, and both the axe and whip were flung several meters away. For a moment, Zhao Xian froze in disbelief, as did her father. This, they both thought silently, almost in unison. A true master. One stayed reserved, biting back the words, while the other, even more exhilarated, could not contain her excitement. Zhao Xian promptly turned and shouted to Zhao Mingyi, "Father, do you still remember your promise about arranging a martial arts contest for my hand in marriage?" According to the laws of Qingzhou, women not formally matched by the state-appointed matchmaker before the age of 14 faced an annual increase in their family tax obligations. Zhao Xian was already 18 by traditional reckoning, and the penalty accumulated over the last 4 years had cost her family nearly 100 taels of silver. Zhao Mingyi didn't mind spending for his daughter's sake, but every suitor he had introduced to her was roundly rejected. His wife, unwilling to force their daughter, had stalled the marriage process, sending out dowries every year while allowing the fines to pile up. Seeing his frustration, even I couldn't help but sympathize. Desperate for a solution, he had publicly announced that his daughter's husband must prove himself in combat to win her hand, hoping to find someone strong enough to both subdue and protect her. But the plan had backfired. No one in Ancon County could best her. And now, thanks to her growing strength and inflated pride, she had thoroughly backed her father into a corner. Lowering his voice, Zhao Mingyi attempted to reason with her. "Shinner, while this man has talent, look at how he dresses. He's clearly just a poor farmer. If you marry him, you'll suffer hardships." Yet Zhao Xian boldly raised her chin. "I'm not afraid of hardship. Besides, I won't go hungry as long as you're my father. If he can defeat me, what does it matter if he's from a rural background? In times like these, true ability is what elevates a man. He might even become a great general one day." Yin Zheng, unable to stifle his amusement, turned to me and asked with a teasing smile, "Forgive me for asking, but are you already married?" Calmly, I replied, "I am. My wife waits for me at home." Hearing this, Zhao Mingyi grew visibly more anxious. Do you hear that, Shiena? That means you'd only ever be a concubine. As the prestigious head of Shunfeng Escort Agency, Zhao Mingyi was a respected figure in Ankang County. He dealt with both the authorities and the underworld, even entertaining the magistrate himself on occasion. If his daughter were to marry a country boy, and as a secondary wife no less, it would be a blow to his reputation as well as his pride. But Zhao Xian didn't so much as flinch. So what if I'm a concubine? It's not like we're vying for the throne. It makes no difference whether you're the wife or not. She fired back boldly. And anyway, who can say for sure who'd bear him a son first? Her cheeky remark drew laughter from even me, while Zhao Mingyi's face had already turned livid with anger. Zhao Xian stood with her hands on her hips. I'm going to grab our family heirloom bow. Only if you can draw it will you have the right to compete with me. Hey, don't you dare let me down. I stared at her and suddenly asked, why should I marry you? Zhao Xian froze in place. Am I not beautiful? I glanced her up and down briefly. Beautiful. But beauty itself isn't useful. You must demonstrate your value. Zhao Xian immediately retorted. Of course I'm useful. I know literature and martial arts. If you marry me, the entire Shunfeng Escort Agency comes as my dowry. As she said this, she casually patted Zhao Mingyi's shoulder, making his face turn purple with rage. I pondered for a moment. Go ahead. Zhao Xian cheered gleefully and turned to dash away. What I didn't say aloud was, this girl is indeed useful to me. In the future, I'll have my hands full with matters and little time to handle household affairs. With her around, there's no need to worry about anyone stirring up trouble. Moreover, the escort agency, constantly traveling across the land, has access to a vast network. This influence will undoubtedly be leveraged to my advantage. Zhao Mingyi's gaze toward me completely shifted. What had moments ago been polite regard was now filled with hostility, as if he were staring at a brat trying to snatch his daughter. What father could maintain a pleasant face in this situation? Luckily, Yinzheng finished appraising the tiger carcass and quickly stepped in to mediate. Honored guest, this tiger carcass is missing its pelt and a paw. What happened? I kept the pelt to use as a bed cover and sold the paw to the apothecary in town, I replied. Yinzheng's mouth twitched slightly, silently scolding me for my extravagance. The remaining tiger bones, heart, and tendons are still intact. If we use our agency's connections to transport them to Xing'an City, they could sell for at least 3,000 taels. If we handle the delivery and sale, the commission would be 10%. What do you think? 10%? I frowned. 10% of 3,000 taels would be 300 taels, an exorbitant figure. Even Zhao Mingyi glanced away, clearly thinking this job shouldn't be worth more than 50 taels at most. Yet Yinzheng dared to ask for 300. Yinzheng remained composed and explained. First, without our service, the tiger carcass would fetch, at most, 2,000 taels. Even with our 10%, you'd still come out ahead. Second, if you manage to draw that heirloom bow in a moment, we'll reduce the fee to 100 taels. I instantly understood. If I failed to draw the bow, it'd imply the tiger's origin is dubious, and the extra 200 taels would mitigate that suspicion as a risk fee for the agency. Not necessary, I stated flatly. If I can draw the heirloom bow and defeat your daughter in a competition, you can still keep the 300 taels. Consider the extra 200 taels as my betrothal gift. 200 taels as dowry. Zhao Mingyi pressed his lips together. These days, with the sparse population in Great Zhou, dowries were practically non-existent. Daughters were almost handed off for free. Yet here I was, wealthy and capable, willing to spend extravagantly. Zhao Mingyi's opinion of me slightly improved, though he remained far from willing to marry off his daughter. The heirloom bow is here. Zhao Xian eagerly ran out from the main hall, holding a bow case. The escort guards and porters had already gathered in a circle, all eyes fixed on the case in her hands. As the case opened, a pitch-black lacquered bow was revealed. Zhao Mingyi's voice turned cold as he introduced it, clearly hoping to intimidate me with its reputation. This bow is called Shadow Seeker, an ancestral treasure crafted from wild ox horn. Its draw weight is 3 stone. 3 stone, 180 pounds of force. Anyone capable of drawing such a bow could qualify for a royal appointment. A 3-stone horn bow. Truly a priceless treasure, I remarked, accepting the bow. I placed 3 fingers on the bowstring and began to apply power gradually. Creak. The bowstring emitted a heavy groan, tightening more and more until I had drawn it 2/3 of the way. The gathered spectators, guards, and the Zhao family alike held their breath, staring intently at the taut string. Shadow Seeker was a power bow, not a practical combat bow. It was designed to train strength, not rapid firing. Drawing it didn't guarantee sustained usage. I bit down, muscles bulging and veins surging across my shoulders and back, but the string stopped there. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't pull it further. My hand began to tremble as I strained past my limits, but ultimately, I fell short of the final stretch. The guards instantly started whispering amongst themselves. Drawing a bow like this requires one smooth, unbroken effort. If you don't manage it in one go, it's even harder afterward. Easy for you to say. If you think it's so simple, why don't you give it a try? He's already pulled over 2 stone, while you couldn't even handle 2 stone. Well, I don't aspire to marry the eldest daughter, do I? Ha ha. Zhao Mingyi clearly exhaled in relief. Zhao Xian sat wide-eyed, disbelief written all over her face. She couldn't reconcile the fact that I, who seemed so capable, would fall short at this last hurdle. Young man, don't beat yourself up over it. I could only just barely manage to draw this bow in my youthful prime. Zhao Mingyi chuckled, attempting reassurance before adding, if I tried now as an old man, there'd be no chance, haha. His amusement stemmed from seeing his strong-willed daughter discouraged and me, the potential son-in-law, failing to hit the mark. I released my grip without frustration, undeterred. After all, my initial attempt was merely forceful exertion, meant to test my strength's upper limit. Pushing to the limit requires more than brute force. It demands skill, too. Just a little more. Can you try again? Zhao Xian, unwilling to give up, grabbed my arm. Her brows knitted tightly, her voice laced with a plea. Yinzheng added his persuasion. This bow is extremely demanding. Perhaps our guest should rest a bit. Zhao Mingyi's face darkened, secretly cursing the two for siding with an outsider. No need. I steadied my breath, bent low, and clenched the bow with both hands, channeling all my strength. With a single motion, I pulled the horn bow into a perfect full draw, commanding the attention of the entire room with my presence. A loud creak pierced the air as the bow reached its full tension. Zhao Mingyi's smile froze, his gaze fixed on the fierce determination emanating from me. It was as if he saw a reflection of his younger self, full of ambition, dreaming of military glory. However, blinded by overconfidence, he had once underestimated an enemy, taking an arrow to the knee that shattered those dreams forever. A fine bow, I commented as I released it, exhaling deeply. Turning to Zhao Mingyi, I asked, Master Zhao, what's next on the agenda? Zhao Mingyi hadn't yet gathered his thoughts when Zhao Xian excitedly chimed in ahead of him. During the snowstorm, there will be a martial competition in Xing'an City for a bride selection. You must come. She tucked the bow away proudly into its case like a triumphant general and strode into the main hall with her head held high. Yinzheng patted my shoulder with a laugh and guided me to sign the escort contract. This job had some serious stakes. The shipment warranted the deployment of 12 armed escorts, 3 carts, and Zhao Mingyi himself leading the team. Yinzheng handled the pricing negotiations. Zhao Xian wanted to come along, too, but she was firmly assigned to stay behind in the county to keep watch over things. With both the chief escort and the manager personally taking part, Shunfeng Escort Service was going all in. I paid 50 taels as a deposit, left my contact address, and departed. Once the escort team returned, the rest of the payment would be sent to my estate directly. As I exited the escort agency, Zhao Xian insisted on walking with me for part of the way. On the road back, I encountered an anxious Lin Feng. The recent pawnshop heist had become the talk of the town. County constables were scouring the area for clues. Perched atop a slow-moving ox-drawn cart, I teased him with a grin. Brother-in-law, still busy, huh? Lin Feng climbed aboard, sighing with frustration. Some bastard led a group to rob the pawnshop. It's an absolute mess, and no one can clean it up now. Feigning surprise, I replied, Is that so? With constables everywhere, whoever orchestrated it must have some serious backing. He sighed again. It's the county magistrate's nephew. The kid's been crying in his uncle's office for over an hour now. This won't blow over until we figure out what happened. I pressed further. How many nephews does the magistrate have? Maybe 5 or 6, Lin Feng replied, his tone heavy. My heart sank slightly. Until this storm passed, I couldn't utilize the land deeds in my possession. At least not until spring, when things had calmed down and attention had shifted. Acting prematurely would only invite endless trouble. I continued probing. Any progress on the investigation? Lin Feng shook his head. Not a shred of evidence. Honestly, I think half the county must be in on it. As for the ringleader, incredibly cunning. The pawnshop doesn't even look ransacked. There's nothing to go on. The accounts are still missing too. This case is a dead end. Naturally, I felt relieved to hear that. As for the accounts, they were long gone. I'd taken them myself and placed them where no one would ever look. At this very moment, they were beneath Lin Feng's seat. I smiled and offered some flattery. Brother-in-law, you've worked so hard. You've got to come to my place one of these days. I'll whip up some good mountain game for you to enjoy. Lin Feng scratched his head with a shy grin. Any more of that deer's blood wine left? Last time, I didn't quite get to savor it. I patted my chest in reassurance. Plenty. Come by any time and have your fill. It's on me. We exchanged a few more pleasantries before parting ways. Once I got home, the first thing I did was secure the land deeds in a safe spot. Then I called Yang Er and the others to commence a big project, building a brick kiln. I'd picked out the location already, a flat area just outside the village. First, we dug trenches to outline the kiln's boundaries. Since there were no pre-made bricks on hand, the first kiln structure had to start as a pit foundation. The raw material for bricks came from river clay, mixed with coarse salt and wood ash. The clay needed to be dried, sifted, kneaded with water, and shaped before being fired in the kiln, a process that required several days. Altogether, it would take at least 2 weeks to complete. Before winter set in fully, I aimed to fire 2 batches of bricks. These would first go toward constructing a heated brick bed, while the walls of the new structure would be made with wooden frames compacted with yellow mud. As long as the setup could get us through the winter, that would suffice. The very next morning, I gathered everyone in the village capable of labor, men and women alike, offering a wage of 20 copper coins a day. The work began immediately. Elsewhere, when Xiao Kong woke up and noticed all his workers were gone, his face turned ashen with rage. Gripping his steward by the collar, he demanded an explanation, only to learn that every single one of his hires had been taken on by me. All right, very well. Chindagon, it seems you're dead set on challenging me head-to-head. Let's see how far you're willing to go against me. Let's see how long you can last and how many temp workers you can afford. With just 2 household servants left, Xiao Kong headed straight to the construction site. The village had about 50 or 60 able-bodied workers available, and paying them a couple taels of silver daily was a hefty expense. The more he thought about it, the more amused he felt, thinking I was deliberately trying to humiliate myself, using the little money earned from selling wild boars to compete financially with the village head. Ridiculous. When he arrived, he saw the pit already dug out, and people hauling wet clay from the river. Xiao Kong couldn't help but laugh right on the spot. The look in his eyes was all mockery, mocking me for naively trying to fire clay bricks on my own. Clay bricks were worth at most 1 or 2 copper coins each. Wealthy families wouldn't bother with them, and poor families couldn't afford them. Considering the size of this kiln, it could fire 5,000 bricks at a time, maybe 20,000 a month. Even if every last brick sold, it'd only amount to 20 to 30 taels of silver. But hiring the entire village to do the work meant all the profit would get eaten up by wages. If anything went wrong, I'd have to cover the difference myself. What was more disastrous was that no one in Little River Village would buy them. The county might not even take them. And if I truly wanted to sell, I'd have to risk a trip to Shingen City. As he calculated again, Xiao Kang's disdain grew, and he finally spat out 2 words. Foolish idiot. One of his servants whispered, Master, should we just stand by and watch? With a smirk, Xiao Kang stroked his short beard, saying, Let him mess around. My fields are ruined by those wild boars anyway, so I don't need that many workers right now. Xiao Kang was convinced that I wouldn't last long. Once my silver ran out, the villagers would inevitably return to working under him. A few days later, the kiln was finished, and the first batch of bricks was loaded in. The builders headed up the mountain to chop trees, saving the good wood for building my house, and using the lower quality pieces directly as firewood. Xiao Kong came by daily to supervise. He had his servants carry a lounge chair and tea, sitting far off to watch as my silver was spent hand over fist. The more he watched, the more delight he took in it. What are they doing now? Xiao Kong pointed at some villagers as he sipped tea. One servant replied that they were selecting good lumber to bring back for building Chindagon's house. Over the last few days, his courtyard had been demolished and extended several times over. They were putting up sheds and structures and working at a blazing pace. Putting up sheds? Chao Kong suddenly felt uneasy. He jumped up from the lounge chair and decided he needed to take a closer look himself. While I was busy giving orders by the kiln, I noticed Chao Kong leaving but didn't think much of it. Not long after, Chao Kong reached the slope leading to my house, only to be stunned by what he saw. The dirt path was now paved with gravel. Around the large trees stood makeshift flower beds. The backyard fence had been replaced with a new one, and the courtyard now had a side entrance wide enough for ox carts to pull in directly. One of the sheds appeared to be for the ox cart. Beside it was a large chicken coop with over a dozen chicks pecking at feed. What's that big shed in the back? Chao Kang's eyes darted as he tiptoed around the perimeter. Rustling noises came from the large, tightly sealed shed. It was absurdly large, and nothing could be made out from the outside. Chao Kang was burning with curiosity. One of his servants whispered a suggestion. "Master, you could climb the tree." No longer concerned about decorum, Chao Kang scurried over to a large tree and, with the help of his servants, climbed halfway up. Peeking through the branches into the shed, he froze. There, moving inside, was a shadow of something gray and white. It was absolutely unmistakable. It was the warhorse brought back by that outsider the other day. Chao Kang slipped. With a loud thud, he fell from the tree, rolling several feet and letting out a terrible cry of pain. From inside the yard, Lin Ruru, who was about to feed hay to the horse, heard the commotion and shouted loudly, "Who's out there?" Writhing in pain, Chao Kang clutched his thigh and urged his servants, "Get me up. Hurry, let's run." The two servants, shaken, lifted him and quickly escaped into the wooded hills behind. Despite wincing in agony, Chao Kang's heart was racing with excitement. With clenched teeth and a sinister grin, he said, "Chin Dagon, you're done for now. Harboring a military horse is a crime punishable by death. First thing tomorrow, I'll report you to the county office. And on the day you're executed, I'll be right in the front row to watch your head roll." Meanwhile, unaware of the impending disaster, I continued to oversee the brick kiln, feeling a sense of satisfaction as bundles of firewood were fed into the flames. Just as I was about to take a breather and sip some tea, I noticed a group arriving at the village entrance. It was the men from Shunfeng Escort Agency. Zhao Xian rode atop a tall horse, while Yinzheng sat in a sedan chair. The escort agency's flag fluttered in the wind, exuding an imposing presence. Hurriedly donning my jacket, I ran up to greet them. Spotting me from afar, Zhao Xian flushed and blurted out, "Husband, I'm here." While her father was away these last few days, Zhao Xian had found herself bored out of her mind at the escort agency. Ever since witnessing my skills the other day, she couldn't stop recalling my cold yet striking face and the image of me drawing that mighty bow. After just a few days apart, she had missed me dearly. So much so that, upon seeing me, the words escaped her lips before she could hold them back. "This girl." Yinzheng sat in the sedan chair, hearing the title, feeling a headache coming on. He raised his hand to press his forehead in frustration. Qin Shi chuckled awkwardly and waved his hand. "Miss Zhao, please don't call me that so casually. If the missus at home hears it, I'll have a hard time explaining." "You're married?" Zhao Xian rode her horse closer, her cheeks slightly flushed but her gaze direct. "No problem. Take me to meet her. I'll explain on your behalf." Afraid she might cause more trouble, Yinzheng hurriedly stopped the sedan chair and stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Honored guest, the task you entrusted to Shunfeng Escort Agency has been completed." A guard brought over a small box reverently. Yinzheng clearly and meticulously reported the account details. The tiger carcass sold for 3,200 taels, minus the commission of 320 taels and your 50-tael deposit. The total amount is 2,930 taels. Please check it thoroughly. Qin Shi raised his eyebrows. This escort agency is quite reliable. Managed to sell it for more than I expected. He accepted the box, which contained a stack of silver banknotes alongside loose bits of silver coins. Zhao Xian dismounted her horse and blocked him with a smile. "You're just going to leave after making money? Won't you invite us in for tea?" Qin Shi nodded. "Of course you're right." He led the group into the village and toward his home. Though still unfinished, the courtyard, with its recently widened cobblestone path and trees for shade, did not feel shabby. Opening the door, Qin Shi called loudly, "Rower, prepare tea. We have guests." Lin Ruru, busy tidying the yard, turned to see the long procession at the base of the slope, panic setting in. The yard was messy, and this was the first time Qin had formally brought guests home. She felt at a loss as the lady of the house. Hurriedly, she brought out 2 long benches and went inside to brew tea. Once finished, she quietly stood beside Qin. As Zhao Xian and Yin Zheng entered, Lin Ruru grew tense and quickly bowed, amusing Zhao Xian with her excessive politeness. Qin explained, "This is Miss Zhao Xian, the eldest daughter of Shunfeng Escort Agency, and this is Manager Yin. I asked them to sell the tiger, and they've come to deliver the payment, so I invited them in for tea." Hearing the mention of Shunfeng Agency, Lin Ruru's heart thudded even harder. She'd heard long ago about their reputable name and Zhao Xian's famous title as a heroine among women. Immediately, she bowed once more. "A pleasure to meet you, Miss Zhao and Manager Yin." Zhao Xian, however, walked straight up, took Lin Ruru's hands warmly, and pulled her aside. "No need to be so formal, sister. I merely wanted to see what kind of woman has captured Qin's heart. Now that I see you, indeed, you're as gentle and lovely as he described. Even I feel protective toward you." Lin Ruru's face turned crimson on the spot. Not quite processing what captured his heart fully meant, she was led aside, glancing helplessly toward Qin for rescue. "Manager Yin, please have tea," Qin said casually, smirking slightly as he turned his attention back to his male guest. Yin Zheng scanned the yard. The old, thatched hut still stood, but the frame of a new house was already erected, with the foundation clearly laid. "Planning to build a new house?" Yin Zheng observed with curiosity. "Winter's almost here. Think you can finish on time?" Taking a sip of tea, Qin replied casually, "It'll be ready before the first snow. Otherwise, winters in these hills truly can freeze people to death." Yin Zheng burst into laughter. "Can't be that bad. Shunfeng Agency has spare rooms. You're welcome to stay. Plenty of charcoal to keep warm. We wouldn't treat your wife poorly, I assure you." Qin shook his head. "That won't be necessary. I'm planning to build a traditional heated bed, warmer than any charcoal." Yin Zheng was about to ask more when a sudden exclamation came from the backyard. Lin Ruru's startled voice. "Really?" He really agreed. Looking toward the sound, they saw Zhao Xian whispering with Lin Ruru, the 2 women suddenly as close as sisters. Noticing their gaze, Zhao Xian quickly led Lin Ruru toward the backyard, obviously reluctant to share their conversation with the 2 men. Once out back, something else caught her eye, the gray horse. She insisted on teaching Lin Ruru how to ride, despite Lin Ruru's flustered protests and desperate pleas for mercy. Meanwhile, in the front yard, after chatting for a bit longer, Yin Zheng eventually managed to drag away a very reluctant Zhao Xian. Lin Ruru still seemed weak in the knees as she returned, her cheeks flushed brightly. Clearing the teacups, Qin teased, "So, she told you everything?" Leaning into his embrace, Lin Ruru softly replied, "The one you're planning to marry, it's Miss Zhao. She's 2 years older than me, yet she insists on calling me elder sister. It's so embarrassing." Though her words sounded shy, in her heart, she'd already considered this a happy event. Excitedly, she began wondering about preparations, bridal bedding and slippers for Zhao Xian, as well as setting aside her savings to buy jewelry and rouge. Qin, moved by her generosity, resolved silently to reward her kindness with a proper wedding ceremony of their own. Leaning closer to her ear, his voice husky, he reassured her, "Don't worry, Rower. Your husband will love you even more from now on." Just as she looked up to ask what he meant, he kissed her deeply. Flustered, she pushed against his chest. "They aren't far off yet. Don't." The thought of someone walking into the yard only deepened her embarrassment. Her whole body felt hot, trembling and soft in his arms as if ignited. Biting her lower lip in frustration, she whispered in equal parts anger and shame, "You rogue, always taking advantage." This trick, but the mixture of embarrassment and thrill drew her further into the depths. Instead of resisting, she clung tighter to Qin's clothes and said with a trembling voice, "Tonight. Rower wants it again tonight." Qin gave a low chuckle and carried her into the room. Over half an hour later, Qin pulled the blanket over the still, flushed body beside him. Lin Ruru poked her head out of the covers, her face red and full of grievance. She muttered, "Husband, Rower regrets it. Can we just sleep properly tonight?" Qin turned to face her and decisively refused. "No." Panicking, she began to stammer. Then I'll go fetch Miss Xianer. You can go to her." Please, I beg you, spare Rower. Qin Shi let out a cold snort, wishful thinking. He sat down by the bedside and reached out his hand toward her. Startled, Lin Ruru started crying and pleaded for mercy. I was wrong. I was wrong, husband. Rower won't complain anymore. I swear I'll serve you well from now on. Finally satisfied, Qin Shi put on his robe. Lin Ruru peeked out half her face from under the blanket again, watching his retreating back with mixed feelings of fear and determination. For the past few days, her husband had been working outside the village, a fact she assumed would leave him exhausted. But instead, he was more energetic than ever. If this went on, she feared it might truly be the end of her on that bed. Biting her lip, she resolved. She had to push for Miss Shinner to join the household as soon as possible, maybe spread the burden a little. As Qin Shi left the house and stretched beneath the morning sun, he noticed a few constables approaching along the path. The one leading the group was none other than his brother-in-law, Lin Feng. Qin Shi raised his hand to greet him, but Lin Feng's face darkened, and he coldly ordered, "Seize him." Qin Shi's chest tightened. Suppressing his frustration, he asked, "What grounds do you have for arresting me?" Lin Feng responded icily, "You've been accused of privately raising military horses, which is a capital offense. I must act in accordance with the law. Don't resist. Come back to the Yamen and explain yourself. Considering your past contributions in capturing foreign raiders, you may receive leniency." Before Qin Shi could respond, the constables descended upon him, quickly locking a wooden yoke around his neck before dragging him toward the courtyard. Lin Feng barked another command. "Search the premises. Find that military horse." As Lin Feng stepped into the yard, he froze momentarily. The modest home had clearly undergone significant improvements since Qin Shi's wedding. Now it was a symbol of comfort. Yet tragically, it had become the scene of a raid. Inside the house, Lin Ruru heard the commotion and rushed out, only to see her husband restrained in the yoke. Her legs went weak. "Big brother, what are you doing? Why are you arresting my husband?" Lin Feng frowned and blocked her path. "Your husband has committed a grave crime. Don't cause a scene. I will do my best to plead for him." Lowering his voice, Qin Shi quickly whispered to Lin Ruru, "Don't panic. Go get that thing to save me." Understanding immediately, Lin Ruru darted back inside, closed the door, and began searching for the embroidered pouch. Meanwhile, in the back courtyard, the gray horse was quickly brought out as evidence. With evidence already at hand, Qin Shi didn't bother offering an argument. If someone was bold enough to accuse him, they'd likely prepared their story thoroughly. This could only mean that one of two individuals was to blame. Aunt Xiao genuinely cared for Ruru and wouldn't take such actions, leaving only Chao Kong as the culprit. Qin Shi stopped resisting. He had just begun establishing himself in Shaha village and forging ties with Zhao Xian and the Shunfeng escort agency. Running away with Ruru would be impractical now. His only hope rested on the contents of the embroidered pouch. If that failed, then money might settle it. As Qin Shi was hauled away, Lin Ruru was gripped with icy dread. She gathered every coin and bit of silver they owned and hurried after him, tailing the group all the way to Wankong County. Her mind raced with plans. She'd first plead with her brother, Lin Feng, to grease the wheels, and then she'd beg Zhao Xian on bended knee. Even then, she wasn't sure if it would be enough to save her husband. 1 hour later, inside the county Yaman's main hall, kneeling below, "Who stands before this court? From Xia village, I am Qin Shi. And what crime stands accused? Privately raising military horses, a crime punishable by death." The magistrate languidly slammed the gavel, sneering down at Qin Shi with an air of indifference. "You've achieved some merit by capturing foreign raiders, yet you dare embezzle military horses? A grave offense indeed. Bring forth the witnesses." "Here, my lord." The lowly one presents himself. Chao Kong limped forward with exaggerated dramatics, clutching his rear. He dropped to his knees faster than anyone expected. "And the evidence?" "Bring forth the military horse." A constable led the gray horse into the courtroom. Chao Kong wasted no time, dramatically pointing at the horse and shouting, "It's this one. That day, over a dozen hired hands, and I saw it with our own eyes." There's no question. Qin Shi felt his heart sink. Just as he suspected, it was Chao Kong orchestrating the betrayal from the shadows. Though he hadn't pieced together how news of the horse had been leaked, he mentally added Chao Kong to his growing list. The magistrate was about to deliver his verdict when Chao Kong suddenly sprang up again. "My lord, one more thing to report." The magistrate's face tensed with irritation. What now? Feigning loyalty, Chao Kong put on an exaggerated look of concern. This man is a skilled martial artist, capable of capturing even foreign raiders. Coincidentally, a pawnshop in our county was brazenly robbed today. The guards and shopkeeper were murdered, and all valuables were stolen. The culprit? A highly skilled fighter. Even more suspiciously, this man was a mere gambler just a month ago. But suddenly, he's flush with wealth, renovating his home and hiring workers. Laborers squander money like running water. This little one dares not make hasty judgments, only requesting my lord to investigate thoroughly. The county magistrate's eyes lit up instantly. The pawnshop's financial deficit had been troubling him for days, and he was in need of someone to take the fall. Now, conveniently, he could not only pin the blame, but also confiscate some wealth in passing. It was exactly what he'd been hoping for. Qin Shi almost burst into laughter from sheer frustration. If these accusations stuck, this wouldn't merely be about compensating with money. It would be a matter of life and death. The magistrate slammed his gavel down again. Lin Feng, it was you who brought the suspect in. Are his claims accurate? Lin Feng's face turned ghostly pale. He glanced briefly at Qin Shi, and there was a slight quiver in his voice. Reporting to your honor, it's true. He attempted to make another statement, but was sharply interrupted by the magistrate. Silence. I've not asked you about anything else. The Qin family's crimes are compounded. There will be no leniency. Take him into custody immediately and carry out his execution tomorrow at noon. Hold it right there. A thunderous shout suddenly rang out from the court floor. A tall, imposing figure strode forward, coming to a stop, meeting the magistrate's gaze without flinching. Zhang Linhua. The magistrate's expression darkened. What is the meaning of this? In a low, commanding voice, Zhang Linhua said, Honorable County Magistrate, this is someone you cannot kill. The magistrate chuckled out of sheer anger. In my jurisdiction, under my governance, there's a soul I cannot execute. Tell me, on what grounds? Zhang Linhua retrieved a golden embroidered pouch, slamming it down onto the magistrate's desk with a sharp snap. Take a close look. Do you know what this is? The magistrate glanced down, and his expression shifted dramatically. Golden cloud brocade. Could it be? Zhang Linhua enunciated each word with clarity. Indeed. This is the golden cloud silk brocade, an exclusive product of the Zhou imperial household. It's fabric produced by the Imperial Weaving Bureau, with only 6 rolls made annually. Who else but a royal family member would dare possess it? Zhang Linhua, a former Imperial Guard instructor, only needed a single statement to render the magistrate drenched in cold sweat. Your Honor, if you truly go through with executing this person, both you and I will lose our heads. Shaken to his core, the magistrate's gaze locked onto Qin Shi below. He couldn't comprehend how an ordinary villager could have ties to the royal family. His trembling hand moved to undo the strings of the pouch, wanting to confirm its contents. Zhang Linhua pressed a single finger down on the pouch's opening. Magistrate, if you choose to peek inside, it could well be the end of 9 generations of your family. The magistrate immediately withdrew his hand as if scalded, his complexion ghostly pale, his fingers trembling over his chest. Beneath him, Chao Kong was so terrified that he collapsed on the ground, prostrate, with sweat pouring down his forehead in a steady stream. Qin Shi, however, was left bewildered. He cast a questioning glance at Lin Ruoru. It was only then that Lin Ruoru let out a quiet sigh of relief. She had sprinted all the way from Xiaohe village to find Zhao Xian, who in turn brought her to Zhang Linhua. Upon seeing the pouch, Zhang Linhua's demeanor shifted immediately, leading to the events of today. Left utterly at a loss, the magistrate turned to Zhang Linhua for guidance. Chief Zhang, how should this case be handled in your opinion? Zhang Linhua stowed away the pouch, turned around, and pointed to the sturdy gray horse outside. Magistrate, have you taken a proper look at this horse? Is it not strong and well-fed? The gray horse stood robust and mighty, with a shiny coat and spirited demeanor. Now noticing it for the first time, the magistrate nodded in agreement. This is truly a fine steed. Zhang Linhua took the opportunity to continue. This man possesses the talent to raise such an exceptional horse. With tensions mounting at the border, there's an urgent need for war horses. Magistrate, did you receive the horse breeding directive from the governor of Qingzhou? The magistrate immediately caught on. Yes, of course I did. He raised his voice and addressed the court. Is the Qin family of Xiaohe village present? This commoner is here. Qin Chi responded, raising his hand, now fully aware that the tide had turned. The magistrate quickly issued a new order. I hereby assign you to establish a horse ranch in the Xiaohe village area effective immediately. You are charged with cultivating pastures and raising horses without fail. Additionally, I will allocate 300 fine horses under your care. To cover their feed, you'll also receive 1 tael of silver per horse every month. As a reward, raise an additional good horse, and you'll receive 20 taels. Rear a great horse, 50 taels, and should you raise a sacred horse, 100 taels. Qin Chi chuckled inwardly. In the blink of an eye, a death sentence had transformed into a lucrative endeavor. Just the monthly feed subsidy alone amounted to over 300 taels. This humble one expresses gratitude for the magistrate's benevolence.